I reject the general narratives because the general narrative that you're giving me was in opposition to the general narrative that I understood, which is okay. But now, as I'm investigating the sources you're sending me, they seem to fully reinforce the narrative that I was giving and counter yours. So now I don't want a narrative view of yours. I want an actual book passage that I can read.
I want to explicitly reject what you just said, which is that the source that I gave you supported, conditional on. So like basically we find the quote, and then you find some other part of the book that makes like separate claims that backs up your side.
Wait. To be clear, hold on, wait. I didn't find a separate part of the book. This is why I asked for the page before and after, and then I asked for the other page before, because I wanted to get the full context of what was said. I'm reading exactly from the part of the book that you said was quoted for whatever source you were reading to prove that Israel was actually at fault for the disintegration of...
I think this might be partially a confusion. I thought that I sent you this story. I think maybe I got the page wrong. If I got the page wrong, I can try and...
Worse than that. Wait.
I think what happened was that... I thought you wanted a source for the...
Wait. Hold on. We're just going...
army was dwindling.
I'm just going through... You linked me 3 different pages. Okay.
Hello.
What do you want? You're tweet storming about me.
That's true. I guess there's a variety. There's a variety of things. I see you finally responded to my Twitter aggression. The first thing is just like, one thing I wanted to talk to you about was the 6-Day War, because I think we probably disagree about that from what I've heard you say. The second thing is like, I just wanted to talk to you about like the ethnic cleansing take or whatever. Because I don't know, I feel like this is kind of like your Vosh CP moment where it's just like said it pretty unambiguously, and now like you're saying that you didn't say it, but I just don't know like how. I don't know, it just seems so unambiguous in the conversation with Lonerbox and the clip prior to that.
What seems unambiguous?
You said what should happen is Palestinians should be ethnically cleansed.
So if you want, you can go by like a 30-second or a 60-second clip, or you could like use your mind and actually listen to what I've said when I've discussed this issue at length. Which one do you want to do? It's up to you.
It's not just that one clip. I mean, there was the original clip where you said that that's what should happen, and then you talked to Lonerbox. And Lonerbox like gave you an out. He was like, "Are you saying that this is what should happen, or are you saying that this is what's going to happen?" And you like very unambiguously said, "This is what should happen." I haven't heard a good argument.
What was the context within of what should happen was it feels like at that time. I've learned a lot more about this conflict, but unfortunately it still feels pretty similar, but I can give a slightly more fleshed out take. But it feels like basically the alternative is either the destruction of Jews in Israel or the destruction of the Palestinian people. And by destruction, I mean, at best, we'll say expulsion from their lands. And given a choice between the two of those, probably side with the Israeli people. There's probably maybe there are other options that can be explored, but that was the context by which I gave that take.
Okay. Yeah, I understand that you have this justification for it, that you think it's one of the only likely options, and out of those you think it's the best option. But as long as sure, you can, I know that you don't agree with the take anymore by the end of the conversation with Lonerbox, but as long as all I was trying to get at is I think you did say that that's what should happen. You did advocate for an ethnic cleansing, and I guess what's just weird to me is I feel like if Hassan had said something like that about Israelis, I'd never see you letting that go. If Hassan said Palestinians should just, what should happen is Palestinians should just take over all of Israel and force Israelis to go somewhere else, you would be talking about how Hassan called for a genocide.
To be clear, that is what Hassan and the vast majority of the extremist left people on Twitter are explicitly calling for. And that is what I'm calling out, but go ahead.
Well, I'm not actually a Hassan bro. Does he support
from the river to the sea, the cheering of the Hamas terrorist attack against Israel, the one-state solution that would almost undeniably lead to a pretty big expulsion of Jewish people from Israel? Yeah, of course, is what the mainstream far-left position is right now.
I don't think that's the mainstream far-left position. Well, at least, the leftists that I've engaged with on this topic are more the, Noam Chomsky or Norman Finkelstein. and the general consensus among those types is that we should have like a two-state solution along the lines of the 1967 borders, rather than a one-state solution, which I think is probably out of the... I mean, a one-state solution, it depends on what we mean. If we just mean like a one-state Palestinian solution, obviously that's a disaster. It would require basically like the ethnic cleansing of Jews. If we just mean like a kind of like secular, multicultural, I mean, that's just like a pipe dream, it seems to me. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I haven't seen all of these lefties calling for like the ethnic cleansing of Israelis. But,
well, they don't
I'm sure
say it in
there.
that many words, of course. They hide it behind dog whistles and cutesy slogans, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure, I guess.
When people are saying fight like Palestinian freedom fighters and from river to sea on October 7th, like hours after the attacks are happening, what do you think they're saying there?
Yeah, I mean, an illustrative. So, I mean, I don't think that even supporting the recent attacks, which I obviously wouldn't, on October 7th, I don't think that entails supporting like a one-state solution. Although I agree that there's probably like a lot of overlap between people who do that. But like Norman Finkelstein is like a helpful example of someone who refused to condemn the Hamas attacks on October 7th. But if you look at what he says should happen, it's basically a two-state solution along the lines of the international consensus. And then, I don't know, from the river to the sea, I think is kind of like unhelpfully vague.
Well, it's not vague. It's the advocate of a one-state solution, right?
I think that's probably the most like plausible interpretation.
What else could it possibly mean?
So Palestinians should be free from the river to the sea, right? Like technically that would be made true if there were a two-state solution and then Palestinians had like decent rights inside Israel, even as like a minority population or something. It would be the case.
What do you think when people say from river to the sea, what do you think of the percentage of people that believe that means a two-state solution?
I don't know the
Give me a guess. Do you think it's like 50% or do you think it's like 5%? What do you think it's closer to?
50 or 5%? I don't know. I mean, I think I don't know. My thought was that probably most pro-Palestinian lefties, at least in like the U.S., like most DSA types, probably support a two-state solution. I think that's like the official DSA position. That's like the Bernie position, the AOC position, and all of that. So I don't know. Among the subgroup of people who say river to the sea, I would imagine it's going to be more skewed towards one-state solution than if you just look at the subgroup of just like the pro-Palestinian left in general.
Okay. I think it's interesting that like I've got like dozens at least of hours of like talking about this in a lot of different ways, but you were like, for some unbelievably stupid reason, you were comfortable assuming that I'm like giddily like pro-genocide based off of a 30-second clip or an answer to another question. But then for people who are, ranting from the river to the sea a day after like the largest terrorist attack ever in Israel, you're like, well, do they really mean this? I think you're giving the most unimaginably charitable interpretation ever for these people. But I just think it's interesting. But
I don't think it's that true. I think that from the river to the sea is like a bit vaguer than what should happen is Israelis should drop their borders where they currently are and Palestinians should have to go live somewhere else. And I mean, fine, like I'm not saying that you're pro-genocide, right? I think one of your, like someone who's friends with you, like someone named like Eli or something, I don't actually remember, but somebody who I think knows you, I was talking with them about it when I was arguing with all of your fans on Twitter, and she was like, yeah, I think this was a bad take from Destiny. I think he's walked it back now that he's like gotten more information, and I think like trying to deplatform him for it is stupid. And I said, yeah, I agree. I agree with all of that. I'm just saying this was a crazy thing to say, even if you've walked it back by this point. And I don't think that your community would give much leeway to other creators if they had said something at like a similar level of like intensity as that about.
No,
say,
I think they probably would. I think even in the worst or most extreme takes that I'd given, the take was basically the conflict is stalemated and unresolvable, and it's not going to end until one side eliminates the other, in which case I'd probably support Israel. It wasn't like, yeah, Israel has a right to just kill every Palestinian for no reason, and they have God-given rights to land and blah, blah, blah. It's always, even in my most ridiculous takes, which, by the way, was like 2 or 3 months ago, I think, talking to Wes, but even the most ridiculous take, it was framed in the terms of like an unbreakable conflict. Not just a random, like, oh, yeah, they should just go and execute all the Palestinians for no reason. Like,
I agree, but that's like, I don't know. I mean, like if Hassan were like, yeah, I just don't think like, unless the Israelis decide to stop being like Islamophobic and oppressing the Palestinians, I think what's just going to happen is Palestinians force all of the Israelis out of all of their land, which a process which would obviously inevitably result in like mass killing.
I understand. We just agree to disagree because I think that is what they're advocating. I think that is what the majority of them advocate, is the elimination of the state of Israel. But all right.
Okay. All right. I wanted to talk a little bit about the 6-Day War, I guess, because I think we probably disagree about that.
Sure. What about it?
So I guess so you think the 6-Day War was defensive?
I think it was justified. Defensive is arguable, but definitely justified.
Okay, so why do you think it was justified?
Because anytime you close down major waterways and you block trade to an area, you can probably see it as an act of war.
Okay, so okay, I mean, I guess there's like a couple questions I would ask. The first is like, is there some threshold like this action would have to harm the Israeli economy to a sufficient degree for it to be justified?
No.
Like even if it had a negligible impact?
Probably. Well, it's kind of baked into the question. Usually when we talk about major waterways, they don't have a negligible impact. So it's kind of baked into the question that if a waterway is being closed, usually it's being closed because it represents some major amount of traffic. But
this one did have a negligible impact. Like according to like the UN Secretariat, not a single Israeli flagged vessel had used the port of Eilat in the previous like 2.5 years, and like only it's verifiable that only 5% of.
I'm sorry. Can you show me that? Can you source me that?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, okay. Do you want me to like link you stuff or?
Just one thing, yeah.
Okay.
So you're saying every single ship that came through the Red Sea preferred to drive all the way around to... Wait, actually, why are we even talking about just Eilat? We would be talking about everything coming from this direction, because the Suez Canal would be closed as well, right?
No, he closed the strait. Nasser closed the Straits of Tiran. The Suez Canal was closed after the 6-Day War started.
I thought Israeli ships were blocked there as well, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, so it was in 1967.
Wait, I'm waiting for the links. I'm waiting for the links. Show me
Sure. Yeah. Hold on, give me 1 second. Okay. No, what the fuck? Okay, so I mean, you can read like, hold on. I don't know how to pronounce this guy's fucking name. Like Indarjit Rikai, who was a United Nations official, reported this in. This was reported in an Arab report and.
Just link me, and I can read it. Just link me.
Yeah, sure. Well, I can link you like a bunch of. Okay.
Just one thing at a time. Start with something. Yeah.
Okay. Hold on, I'll see if I can find a way for this to be accessed, because the Indarjit Rikai source, the Sinai Blunder, is a book.
Are you referencing me a passage in a book, or did you read somebody else's summary of a passage in the book?
No, this was on page like 78 of Indarjit Rikai's book on the Sinai Blunder. And then like in terms of the impact on the Israeli economy, you can see like the There you can see like the statistical abstract of Israel that gets posted. It was on page 437, I think. They talked about the amount of Israeli passage going through the Straits of Tiran. But also, I don't think this is really controversial. Like, I think if you looked at like Wikipedia, it would say the exact same thing, that the impact was actually pretty negligible. Wikipedia.
Is there, didn't they block Israeli ships from passing through the Suez as well? Or no?
I think they blocked the Suez right after the war started, and they blocked the Straits of Tiran before the war started. But it's the blocking of the Straits of Tiran that's like used as pretext for the war. Yeah, I mean, this is on the Wikipedia page. This was from Barak. During this period, the Straits had limited relevance in Israel's economy. Only 10 ships. Oh, this was from 1946 to 1956, so we would need like leading up to the 6-Day War.
So there was a blockage of.
No, there was a blockage of the Straits of Tiran.
What, of the Suez Canal?
No, yeah, of the Suez Canal after the war had started.
Well, but I'm thinking prior to the start of the war.
No, I think that the Egypt closed the Suez on 1967, June 6th, shortly after Israel attacked on June 5th. And then they kept it closed for like 7 years after. You might be recalling to the previous crisis in 1956.
What is the Suez, I'm not. What is the okay, they closed the Suez during the war. What is this? I'm reading this source for like 90% of Israeli oil passed through the Straits of Tiran. Is this true or no?
Yes, Israeli oil did. So I said that 5% of Israel's trade passed through the Iliad. It is true. The only significant commodity that was formally affected by the blockade was oil from Iran, which could have been rerouted at like somewhat greater cost through the Haifa. But then also, like, it's also just worth noting that like it's not even clear that Nasser was enforcing the blockade. So like Rikai also asserts, and the available evidence seems to support him, that the Egyptian Navy had searched like a couple ships after the establishment of the blockade and thereafter relaxed its implementation.
Okay, so one, I think the closure of the Straits on its own, I think is significantly, I think that's decent enough provocation for an act of war. Egypt said as much. Nasser literally said that we know that doing this is going to be an act of war. There were already huge conflicts over these particular straits 11 years earlier. So, I mean, I maybe there weren't that many non-oil supplies that were passing through, but I still do think it's decent provocation for an act of war. Yes.
Okay, so if you're not moved by the kind of point that it didn't seem like it was negatively affecting the Israeli economy that much, what about the fact that there were like attempts at diplomatic resolution of the conflict, and basically attempts at quelling the growing tension through diplomacy from like various international bodies and stuff that Nasser, by the way, assented to? He agreed to like international arbitration, world court arbitration, etc. And Israel refused like every attempt at quelling the tension through.
Well, what
diplomacy.
was Nasser's demands? First of all, he's arbitrarily closing down these straits to Israel. I mean, what is the negotiation that he's looking for after this?
Yeah, so I mean, basically what happened was, so I mean, what I'm referencing here is like Egypt. The one thing was that Egypt showed willingness to reactivate and expand the role of EIMAC, which was the Egyptian-Israeli Mixed Armistice Commission, which could have provided some UN presence in the area, which Israel rejected. UN Secretary Uthan...
Hold on, wait. Israel rejected UN presence in the area in what area?
In like the Sinai.
The Sinai? Didn't Egypt already kick out all of those troops from the Sinai?
Well, he wanted a reposition of the troops, but Uthan proposed an ultimatum where he was like, we're only going to remove all of them.
So he forcibly expels the entire UNEF personnel from the area, and then he deploys his military there, and then he closes down these straits leading to Israel, and then he says, okay, let's negotiate. Does that sound like a good position to negotiate from if you're Israel?
Well, so I think the problem is you're kind of making it out as like this was just like a random thing that he decided to do. when in fact it was preceded by like pretty significant Israeli provocation. And this was basically Nasser. Like Israel had, one where there was the Samu incident where Israel attacked the West Bank town of Samu in response to basically Fatah attacks in Jordan, which everybody realizes, and this is like completely uncontroversial. I mean, you can look at the wiki page of the Samu incident and it'll say this on the front page, that basically Israel attacked Samu to punish Jordan for not curbing Palestinian like infiltration and Fatah attacks, when everybody recognized that Jordan had done everything it could at that point to curb Palestinian infiltration and Fatah attacks. And so it was
I don't think that was recognized, that Jordan did everything they could to curb the attacks. That's why at some point, I think Jordan literally expels the entire PLO from their country. It's because they couldn't control that aspect of Palestinian extremism and they had to kick it out of their country. So, but I mean, regardless of whether or not they could or couldn't control it, I mean, is that not an okay excuse for Israel then to go in and, I guess, blow up what they perceive as terrorist training camps or whatever on their border?
No, because I mean, this was a move that was condemned by the way, the entire international community. And like, for example, Adbol, who was the chief of staff of UN forces in the Middle East at the time, stated that the Jordanian authorities did all they possibly could to stop infiltration. That's a direct quote. And a UN military observer on the Israel-Jordan border noted that even more emphatically that Jordan's efforts to curb infiltrators reached the total capabilities of the country. That's another direct quote. And then like,
yeah, but hold on, so then if attacks are still coming, I guess what is the goal of Israel at that point? What are they supposed to do?
Sorry, what'd you say?
What is Israel supposed to do then if attacks are still coming?
Well, I mean, Israel's attack was intended as like punishment to Jordan to get them to curb the attack. Like Israel's attack wasn't actually targeted against Fatah forces. So what were they supposed to do? I don't know. But what we do know is that what they did do basically had no impact because Jordan was already doing everything they could.
Okay. I don't know if I necessarily agree with the characterization, but I feel like Israel has had a pattern of, in the early parts of the country, especially, that a lot of their attacks have been like disproportionate when they do these retaliatory strikes, which is fair to call out. But I think the justification for Israel at the time is that literally every single Arab country in the region is invested in their destruction, and that if neighbors aren't doing enough to prevent that they're going to continue to do heavy incursions or attacks into neighboring land, right? Which, I mean, whether you like it or not, I think there are arguably decent reasons for why Israel feels that way, right?
Okay, I mean, I would contest some of that characterization.
What would you contest from that?
I would contest that this idea of like the neighboring Arab states, all they wanted was to like destroy Israel as a country. For sure, I think on some level they do want that, but I think that's understating the extent to which there was Arab attempts at like diplomatic engagement that weren't recognized by Israel and the US for a really long time.
Well, hold on. Arab countries literally had a policy of zero diplomatic engagement with Israel.
No, in the mid-70s through the 80s, the PLO and the Arab League, the confrontational Arab states they're referred to, proposed like UN security resolutions to basically, which by the way,
wait, hold on, don't. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I agree with you at that point. That's 10 years. That's after Israel has survived 2 massive wars against like 15 different Arab countries. At that point, they were willing to negotiate, yeah, but Israel probably felt like it had to prove itself as being able to survive them before they'd be willing to negotiate with it. So 67, okay, I mean, like what the Arab states were willing to make agreements to in the 80s is not relevant to Israel in the 60s, right?
Okay, I mean, even before that, like Israel made deals, so for example, do you know like Avi Shlaim?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, so like Avi Shlaim, getting back to our earlier dispute, said the same thing about Jordan, and Israel had basically, actually, I don't want to pursue that actually. So, okay, so I mean,
Israel and Jordan did make kind of agreements throughout history because it I don't know Jordanian history as much, but Jordan feels like probably the weaker of these countries, and they're just trying to like chill and not get cooed or not get toppled, I guess, because they're kind of like the losers in the Arab world is what it feels like. But that didn't prevent Jordan from participating in the Six-Day War. It didn't prevent Jordan from participating in the Yom Kippur War. It didn't prevent Jordan from essentially hosting in the West Bank terrorist attacks and Fedayeen attacks constantly against Israel. So, I mean, it is true that, like, I think even in the Yom Kippur War, I think Hussein was making like secret flights to Tel Aviv to talk to Golda Meir to try to work out them not attacking each other. But I mean, still, largely, the reason why these negotiations happen in secret is because the Arab world had an explicit policy of not even recognizing Israel as a country or doing negotiations, right? The three no's, right?
Well, Palestine recognizing Israel as a country. I don't think Israel recognizes Palestine as a country either.
Hold on, I'm not talking about Palestine. I'm talking about the entire Arab world. I'm saying all the Arab states until Egypt didn't recognize Israel as a country.
Well, that actually, I mean, that's true. That was the case for a long time. That ended at the Oslo Accords. But I mean, it presumably is the Arab states recognizing Israel as like a country and agreeing to, recognize its right to live at peace with its neighbors and so on, was like thought of as basically a component of a possible diplomatic settlement that, again, like in the 70s and 80s, the PLO and the Arab states had asked for. The international community was behind it. Israel and the U.S. rejected it repeatedly.
Wait, rejected repeatedly what?
Yeah, the U.S. repeatedly vetoed UN security resolutions to basically enforce a two-state solution along the lines of the international consensus, which is like a return to the 67 borders.
Are you talking about Resolution 242? Because literally nobody supported that. I don't know where that like, people want to harken back to that now, but nobody supported that. Resolution 242 would have also called for all of the Arab states to recognize Israel as a country for their borders as well. Nobody wanted that shit. I don't even think the Palestinians wanted that shit because they wanted to fight for the entire territory back.
No, there were various resolutions put forward by the Arab states, backed by the PLO in 1976 was the first one, and then they continued into the 80s, which basically called for something along the lines of UN Resolution 242, although interpretations of UN 242 vary, but this was a bit more explicit, which is like basically return to the 67 borders, right of return for Palestinian refugees, or a just resolution to the refugee crisis, partially based on the right of return for Palestinian refugees. Palestine agrees to recognize Israel and recognize its right to live at peace with its neighbors, etc.
Sure, but this agreement can't happen with just Palestine. It has to happen with other Arab countries as well, right?
Yeah, the Arab nation, the Arab League unanimously agreed to this. This was proposed.
What are you talking about? Hold on. Egypt
the
literally got kicked out of the Arab League for signing a peace treaty with Israel for 10 years. When are you saying the Arab League was all ready to come together? Even today, isn't it only like 6 or so Arab countries that recognize Israel as being an actual country?
Yeah, the Arab League. So there's a UN. So there's an attempted UN Security Council resolutions, but then there's a different, basically a UN General Assembly resolution calling for the same thing, and the Arab League unanimously voted in favor of it.
Can you show me that? Which are you? Because if you're talking about a proposal that includes, because I know for a while the Arab League was in favor of some proposals, but some of these included, for instance, like a full right of return, which would have meant like 5 million plus or whatever Palestinians going back to the actual country of Israel. That's not a realistic solution. That's not a realistic engagement with the problem. And a return to the pre-67 borders, so...
Yeah, you think that's not... So your objection is that deal is not realistic?
Of course not. That's not a real deal. Not at all.
What do you mean?
As in if every country is trying to invade and destroy Israel, they manage to fight back and secure some borders, and then there's like, okay, fine, we'll do a peace deal now, but every single Palestinian is going back. You're losing all the territory that you gained in the 6-Day War, and that's going to be great for you. Like, there's no way that Israel would... It's like an unconditional surrender of Israel as a country, right?
Well, no. I mean, the deal as a component forces Palestine and the neighboring Arab countries to recognize Israel's right to live at peace.
Well, maybe we should hold on. No, I mean, they can commit to that, but like, or they can say that, but what assurances does Israel have that commitment is really going to be made? Oh, fuck, you disconnected. I don't know if Israel is going to feel very strongly that there's a strong assurance that that's going to be carried out in the future. No?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess your supporting argument for why it's reasonable for Israel to agree with this is that we kind of already had those borders, and then there was basically aggressive action from the Arab states. But that's what I came here to contest originally. So I guess maybe we could get back to the Six-Day War. I don't know where we were when we ended up pivoting off of that, but like, so I guess what's supposed to be the justice? So the closing of the Straits of Tiran.
I believe it was the closing of the Straits of Tiran, and then it was Israel feeling like Egypt was building up a military force to invade. They had been shipping in a fuck ton of weapons from the Soviet Union. They had just signed a defensive pact with Jordan, and they were beginning to amass troops on the border after expelling the UNEF forces. And I believe that Nasser had been making incredibly aggressive statements, saying, I know that closing the strait is going to be a provocation for war. It will be a war that we will fight, and Israel will be eliminated. That all of these preceding things basically made Israel feel like if war was coming right now, it was probably on the way, and that these were preceding actions of war.
So I mean, with respect to so I mean, there's just three things that I want to note about all of that. Mm-hmm. The first thing is that I think you kind of underplay the role of Israeli provocation leading up, not only with the Samu incident, which is widely recognized as a big cause of the Six-Day War, but also with basically threats from Israeli officials that Israel was going to attack Syria. And, you know, that was a big provocating factor in terms of why...
It can be provocating, but why was Israel making those threats?
Well, so there was an aerial engagement between Syria and Israel like a month prior, and then tension started to build again.
Yeah, but not just that. You've also got the sponsorship of Fedayeen groups across all of Israel's borders that are constantly launching terror attacks throughout this entire time period.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm just saying that the closing of the Straits of Tiran and the buildup of troops, it was basically a product of Nasser coming under increasing pressure from the Arab leaders that he had a defense pact with to basically do something to confront Israel, because they thought that there was an imminent Israeli attack on Syria, and there had been Israeli attacks in the West Bank.
No, I disagree. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. I think from the readings of everything that I've had, Nasser was the one who was incredibly aggressive. Nasser was the one who wanted to make a name for himself. And Israel hadn't just invaded or conquered any territory from neighboring states past its declaration of independence in 1948. It was every other Arab state that was hosting Fedayeen camps, terror attacks, other incursions into Israeli territory. And with Israel fighting back, for sure, with Israel also launching attacks, sometimes when killing way more when they launch attacks back. But the idea that you're telling me that all of the surrounding Arab states felt threatened that Israel was going to start invading and killing everybody else around them? You think that was a more reasonable feeling at the time than Israel feeling the opposite?
Well, I don't know. So I think that there were Israeli threats to invade Syria, and then Israel did in fact invade on the Six-Day War. Now, there was I do believe that at the time there
Hold on. Wait, the threat, Israel was threatening to invade Syria just because they just wanted to take land from Syria?
No, that's not what I said. I mean, there's, of course, surrounding context. There was an ongoing conflict. There was violence between Israel and Syria for a very long time.
Okay.
I'm just saying that,
with little to no attempts from most of these Arab states to curb the violence, right?
No, I don't agree with that characterization. For example, Jordan extensively tried to curb Fatah violence, as UN secretary generals and UN officers.
Yep. I think Jordan tried, yes, but my understanding is Fedayeen camps in Jordan were literally being hosted by Egypt. I don't believe Syria ever tried to curb any of the violence coming from their country towards Israel. I think Jordan is the odd one out here.
Yeah, there was violence back and forth. I mean, you can talk about Syrian attacks, Syrian shelling, of Israelis. You can talk about how the reason for those Syrian shellings of Israelis was because Israelis were increasingly taking over what were supposed to be like these demilitarized zones that were supposed to belong to the Arabs, and that the Arabs were supposed to be be allowed to live in, which was a flagrant
Hold on.
violation.
You're saying that prior to the 6-Day War, Egypt was continuing to expand its borders?
Israel was taking over basically these so basically there was the Israeli-Syrian armistice agreement that ended the 1948 war. The accord established these demilitarized zones between Israel and Egypt. And then basically, according to, again, Oddball, as the Israelis gradually took control over that part of the demilitarized zones, which lay inside the former national boundaries of Palestine, in blatant violation of the UN brokered accord, basically Syria started.
What UN brokered accord? Were the armistice agreements UN brokered? I thought these were all bilateral agreements between Israel and the surrounding and each individual surrounding country.
No, this was UN brokered, the Israeli-Syrian armistice agreement, I'm pretty sure. But, Arab villagers residing in the DMZs that they were supposed to be allowed to live in were, evicted, their dwellings were demolished. The Security Council called on Israel to let the villagers return. Israel refused. And so at a certain point, Syria started shelling those zones that Israelis were increasingly taking over. But, it's just this is not just the history of leading up to the 6-Day War is not the Arab states just randomly attacking Israel responding. It's a bit more complicated than that. There was a lot of provocation on both sides.
Sure. I've never said anything different, that there's a lot of provocation on both sides. I'm sure there is. But I believe that the overwhelming goal of the Arab states was they still desired the expulsion of the Jewish people from what they consider historic Palestine. That was overwhelmingly their goal. The goal wasn't peace for any of them. It was the destruction of Israel.
Yeah, we can talk about whether the Arabs wanted to destroy Israel forever. We can talk about whether the Israelis wanted to destroy all the Arabs. I think if Israel could basically kick all the Arabs out and not face international repercussions for it, etc., they would absolutely do it. But, what a country's highest aspiration is a very small part of the story when we're talking about what kinds of actions they're likely to engage in.
Sure. So then we look at the wars that we're engaged in.
Yeah, and I'm claiming that in this case, in 1967, Israel attacked, and there was no threat of basically an Arab attack. I think everybody acknowledged that. Israeli intelligence suggested that. U.S. intelligence suggested that. Various U.S.
I don't think Israeli intelligence suggested that. U.S. intelligence suggested that, but they also thought that nothing would happen prior to the Yom Kippur War. So I don't know how good U.S. intelligence was in the area. And my understanding is that prior to the beginning of the 6-Day War, didn't Nasser literally receive bad intelligence from the Soviet Union saying Israel was getting ready to invade Syria?
They did, yeah, but So yes, Egypt received a bad Soviet intelligence report, and the Soviet intelligence report was for sure lacking in details. But there are independent sources suggesting that there were Israeli cabinet meetings where they had decided that they were basically going to attack Syria, and there were credible statements from high-ranking officials and from Israeli media suggesting that they were going to attack Syria. So
wait, attack Syria or conquer land in Syria?
At least attack Syria. There were some claims that that Syrian land was going to be conquered, but for the most part, it was that there was going to be a
sure. I'd be interested in seeing prior to the 6-Day War that Israeli cabinet members or people in Israel were making claims about conquering Syrian territory. Broadly speaking, this is the issue that I'm running into with all of I don't know if I call this Arab apologia, but this idea that they were all just chilling and nobody was going to attack Israel and Israel did it themselves. Nasser's statements about closing these straits, Nasser's statements about knowing that this was provocation for war, the expulsion of the UNFOR, it's all of it plays. Do you at least admit that Nasser knew that if he closed these straits, a war was coming? Did he know that?
I don't think he knew for certain it was. I think he knew it was a provocative move for sure.
Okay, so when he says, I think almost verbatim, I know that closing this is an act of war, when 10 years earlier, the Suez Crisis was perceived by Israel to be an act of war, you're telling me that when he closed these straits again, and they positioned all of his militarily defensively across the Sinai, you're saying he didn't know that was going to be an act of war? He didn't expect an incoming attack?
I think that I think that they expected, I mean, it depends on what we mean by expect. I mean, I think that he knew that this was going to significantly raise the probability of one, and that the probability of an attack from Israel was very, very much non-negligible.
Okay, hold on. You're using the wait. All stop. I gotta push on at least one thing. You're using the most Weasley language ever. They knew that it was at the most very, very, very non-negligible. What, like, I don't even know what that sentence means. Okay. Well, so to be clear, he closed these straits that had already involved military conflict. He expelled the UENF personnel. He mobilized his whole army in the Sinai. He signed a defensive pact with Jordan. And then he made statements to the Arab Trade Union saying, I know that this is going to be a provocation of war. I know that Israel's going to want to go to war with us and we will win the war against Israel. At that point in time when he closed it, what do you think what do you think he thinks are the chances that he's provoking a war with Israel? Give me a number.
The chance, God, I don't know. It's so speculative. It's hard to give like my credence is like.
Just take a guess. Just ballpark it.
So you're asking what Nasser thought the probability of a war was as a result of the closing of the Straits of Tiran. That's what you're asking?
Yes.
I don't know. Maybe like probably above 50%. He probably thought it was pretty likely.
Okay. I feel like the number is closer to really 90 to 95%, but okay. But even more than 50% is really high if you're doing something that there's over a 50% chance of causing a war. But
yeah, so my claim would be that to be fair, as like a matter of my judgment, I think it was, like I wish he hadn't done that. Like I think that was a bad move. It was like a bad thing to do. My claims are just that one, this was something that he was kind of pressured into doing. Because he had all these because he had like defense pacts with these surrounding Arab states, and he was increasingly coming under pressure from them.
I don't think he had. Hold on, am I missing something? Who is he coming under pressure by? Isn't Egypt seen as basically one of the big bad boys trying to head the Arab League at this time? Who in this region has the power to pressure Nasser into anything? I feel like he's the one applying the pressure to everybody else.
No, like the Syrians and the Syrians, for example. And other Arab states were basically saying that Nasser was hiding behind the UNEF troops to like avoid confronting Israel.
I think the only person who said that was King. Was it Abdullah or Hussein? I think it was King Hussein in Jordan made that statement about to Nasser. But like Jordan is literally a comically, no offense, but a comically inept country at this point. They have no power. Hussein is constantly making all these small deals on the side with everybody to maintain some form of legitimacy to the surrounding Arab states. Like so embarrassingly that like during the Yom Kippur War, like Jordan was basically forced to send like a 1,000 troop contingency to fucking Damascus, and he's literally making secret calls with Golda Meir saying like, listen, we're gonna send troops there. You don't hit my troops, I won't hit yours, but I have to send somebody because I look so fucking bad. Like I don't think that Jordan is ever seriously applying pressure to Egypt. I think Nasser, any pressure that is applied to him is because he's the one that's taken all the aggressive positions, and he's the one that wants to see himself as like the head of the Arab world. At least that's the feeling I have. I don't know who else is vying for power or influence at this time. I don't even know who in Syria. I don't even know who the leaders of Syria are at this time. But Nasser is the one who's been like aggressively positioning himself over and over and over and over again, right? He did it with the Suez Crisis as well, right? Where he nationalized the company, paid him out, he kicked him out, and then he's like, oh, I'm gonna fucking run this shit now. And then he, starts. Did he close the Suez Canal? I think initially to Israeli vessels. Like he's already doing this. Like nobody pressured him to do that in the Arab world, did they? Or
sorry, nobody pressured who to do what?
Did any of the other Arab states pressure Nasser into taking sole control of the Suez Canal?
Well, they weren't pressuring him directly, but he was basically like King Hussein and like Radio Jordan and others were basically criticizing him for being like weak and for hiding behind UNEF troops to avoid confronting Israel.
No, I'm saying for the Suez Crisis in '56, not the 6-Day War.
Oh, in '56? No. No, in '56, I think Nasser closed the Suez Canal and stuff, and his cited reason was had to do with Israel's refusal to abide by UN resolutions which would force it to like acknowledge Palestinian right of return in Israel, etc. But no, I'm not aware, at least, of any pressure he was under at that time to close the.
Sure. So the idea that like Nasser is like being pressured by everybody else, I don't buy that much. But
okay, I mean, like there undoubtedly were statements from like King Hussein, like Radio Jordan, like Jordanians, Syrians were starting to like criticize him, like we have a defense pact with you, and we keep having these engagements with Israel. They saw it as Israeli aggression against them. I think it's a bit more multifaceted, but we keep being attacked by Israel. You're not doing shit about it. We have a defense pact with you. What the fuck is going on, kind of thing. And I think that was like this Samu incident. Again, this is like not that controversial. Like you can read this if you look at the Samu incident. Like this is like on the first page of the wiki. Like the Samu incident is widely thought of as a big contributing factor to the 6-Day War for exactly this reason, that it heightened Arab tensions in the region because basically the West Bank was attacked by Israel. Egypt didn't really do anything about it, and he was starting to get criticized for that. And so, yeah, I mean, but I guess like besides that, so like, so I think that there was some role of Israeli provocation leading up to the 6-Day War. I also think, and these are the two most important points in my view, which are that the first is that there were legitimate, like U.S. officials were saying, we think this can be solved. Like there was supposed to be a meeting between like Nasser's vice president and Washington, where they were supposed to discuss, and Nasser had previously said, according to U.S. officials, that he was open to like world court arbitration in terms of the Straits of Tehran and stuff like that. And basically, so there were legitimate attempts at diplomacy, and the Egyptians generally assented to all of them, assented to world court arbitration, etc. And Israel blocked literally every single attempt at resolving the conflict through diplomacy.
Wait, can you link me or give me something on these talks or what the demands were?
Yeah, so there were a few.
No, just link me, so I can read it.
Just link you? Okay. I have to find. I could give you quotes right now, or if you just want me to link you, that's fine as well.
Just link me.
Okay. Okay. Jeez. Presented Nasser with the proposal. So you can look at well, this isn't a link, but I can find the link to the UN resolution that talks about this. The report by the Secretary General, UN Security Council, 26 May 1967. Let's see if I can find a link to this. I'm having trouble finding a link to the report. It was a report by the Secretary General from the United Nations Security Council.
Let's Google 6-Day War prior, Nasser, UN security negotiations. What is this? I see that in this was on 242. What year is this though? That's important.
The Cairo documents, page 243. That's a book as well.
.233 footnote. This is on 78, so it doesn't really matter here. Oh wait, hold on. No, never mind. Yeah, we don't share. Fuck.
The problem is a lot of this is like UN archives and shit, which is like not that easy to pull up like links for.
Well, if it's a Security Council resolution or whatever, then we should be able to look at it, right? It'll literally be hosted on the UN site.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at for the specific resolution. All I could find was a reference to the resolution in a book, but I can't find the resolution itself.
Well, what's the name of the resolution? I can just Google it, right?
Yeah, so there was, well, sorry, it wasn't a resolution. It was a, sorry, did I say a resolution? It was a Security Council report by the Secretary General. It was written by Uthant. So, like, and Uthant said, basically, actually, so I don't know, you probably don't want me to explain the situation and give quotes without the link, so I guess I'll...
Well, if you give me a quote, I could probably Google the quote and we could find out, but...
Yeah, sure. So, well, I can give you... So basically, the quotes are... Okay, so basically the situation was, if this helps you find something online about it, basically Uthant presented Nasser with a proposal. It was reportedly backed by the United States. Basically, it called for a 2-week moratorium in the Straits of Tehran, similar to the one that Uthant had arranged during the Cuban Missile Crisis, where basically Israel was going to refrain from sending and Egypt was going to refrain from inspecting ships. And there would be a renewed effort at diplomacy, and there would be a special UN representative appointed in the area. Egypt assented. Secretary General Uthant noted that Egypt's accession was, quote, very significant. And then he also recalled that, quote, Israel did not agree to either of these conditions. So that's from UN Secretary General Uthant in a report.
Okay, I just found some random thing called the Hekl Papers, a discourse on politics in the 1967 Arab-Israeli War with Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser, published in 2005. So let's see what this says. Nasser, okay, I'm just going to read this. Discussion on the Sinai and strategic depth. Both men then turned their discussion to the issue of strategic depth. Egypt had concentrated its forces in the Sinai along the border with Israel. Would it have been better to deploy forces closer to the Suez Canal, giving army units access to shorter logistical supply lines, and more importantly, a closer proximity to command and control located along the Nile Delta? This seems like a basic understanding of the principles of war, yet Amir, who chose pride and conceit by positioning air and land forces closer to the Israeli border, where it was extended logistically and lacked cover provided by the hills and mountains of central Sinai. Nasser remarks to Hekl that this was the lesson that should have been learned in the 1956 war. Nasser comments that Field Marshal Amir had ordered a general retreat on the morning of June 6th after being overwhelmed by the shock of the Israeli airstrike. Nasser lamented that his commander-in-chief could not even conduct a defensive action of the Sinai to buy political time to negotiate a ceasefire. Nasser complains that Amir hid losses from him and was in paralysis for 3 hours while his general staff looked into fighting a holding action in the Sinai. Nasser also discusses how the Egyptian media contributed to the overall noise that made many, including Amir, underestimate the Israelis. Headlines blamed President Lyndon Johnson for conducting a campaign of economic, military, and political pressure on Egypt. There were fantastic stories about how the United States had flown military stocks from Wheelus Air Force Base in Libya to Israel. Another story was that the U.S. aircraft carrier was off the coast of Port Said requesting permission to transit the Suez Canal. The Sixth Fleet carriers were actually 500 miles from the Israeli coast in the Mediterranean. And answering Hegel's questions of how Amir was caught so unprepared, Nasser rationalizes that Amir was caught unprepared in the 1967 war because he relied heavily on United Nations Secretary General Uthant's assurances that he would negotiate a 2-week moratorium between the parties. This left until the 13th of June at the latest before hostilities began, and that Uthant, along with Lyndon Johnson and Soviet Premier Kosygin, would enforce the UN's efforts for a cooling period between Egypt and Israel. Nasser then tells Hekl that weapons could be replaced, but the troops would be more difficult to replace. So it sounds like there might have been some talk here at the UN, but it would have only been, as you said, for a 2-week cool down, and it doesn't sound like Israel was intending to use this 2-week cool down to actually pursue some meaningful peace in the region, but if anything, we're just using it to stall for future military action, which I think is exactly what Israel had feared, assuming I'm to believe what this paper is saying. But
that's what Nasser said?
Well, that's what this paper says, and that's supposedly what Nasser said to Amir, A-M-E-R, but...
That he was not going to use the cool down to pursue a diplomatic solution.
That he thought that that this left until the 13th of June and the latest before hostilities began. Amir was caught unprepared in the 67 war. Oh, Amir was caught unprepared because he heavily relied on the United Nations General Youthant's assurances that he would negotiate. So it sounds like he thought he had more time to set up defenses, basically. This left until the 13th of June at the latest before hostilities began.
Okay, but there was no indication that there was no indication that Nasser was like in bad faith, like I'm not actually, because it was a part of the deal that there was going to be a renewed effort at diplomacy. There was going to be some like UN mediation.
My understanding of the Arab world, and especially Egypt at that time, I find it really hard to believe that there was I don't think there was an appetite in any part of the Arab world for peace with Israel. So I would be shocked if the man who fashioned himself as the leader of the new pan-Arab nation was going to try to pursue peace with Israel. It just doesn't sound like it fits with any of what was going on in this entire part of the world at the time. That would be shocking to me. Any sort of pursued peace with Israel would be the most undermining thing Nasser could ever possibly do for his position. Every other country around Israel hated them.
Okay, well, I mean, there was if you think that there was no appetite for basically a diplomatic resolution to the building tension. I mean, well, like there's statements I could point to, but like,
Well, yeah, give me the statements. I'm curious. What are the statements? Give me the statements. Might as well. We'll quote mine. Fuck.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, give me quotes.
Sure. Well, so as more contextual evidence, before I just start giving you like random quotes or whatever, I mean, I would point to the fact that it was reported by Donald Neff that right before the 6-Day War, a breakthrough in the crisis was apparently reached where Nasser indicated to Robert Anderson, a former Treasury Secretary, and Charles Yost, who is a retired ambassador, he basically indicated to them that he was open to world court arbitration of the dispute over the Straits of Tiran, and was also, and here accounts are kind of contradictory, but he was also open to an easing, supposedly open to an easing of the blockade that would allow for the passage of oil pending the court's decision.
Sure.
And so Nasser agreed to send his vice president to Washington by the end of the week to explore a diplomatic settlement. The Washington meeting never happened because Israel struck before it could take place.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing that. My understanding at the time was Nasser was jerking around both the United States and the Soviet Union, that he wasn't actually interested in working with either of them. He was just trying to pit them against each other in order to win favor, and that most of his negotiations were pursued essentially in bad faith. That's why I believe it was under Eisenhower that we killed our financial support. Was it in 55 or 53 for the dam, I think, that was being built in the southern part of Israel? But eventually the United States figured that like this guy's just jerking us around, and I think Nasser said as much. He didn't want to be a puppet of either the USSR or the US, and he was just playing off of our hatred for each other in order to win favor. So I don't know if that would have influenced these negotiations. That might be totally irrelevant, but yeah, I'd be curious in seeing anything where we had almost reached diplomatic resolution to the closure of these straits, but that seems...
I would say,
yeah.
I don't know if I would make a statement as strong as we almost reached a resolution. What I would say is that diplomacy seemed to be working, like, despite Israel.
Well, hold on. Wait. When you say seemed to be working, the straits were closed. Israel had kicked out the UNEF. They were mobilizing their army. At what part here, where is diplomacy seeming to be working?
Well, in the sense that it was reported that there was like a breakthrough in negotiations between U.S. officials and Nasser, where again Nasser said he was open to world court arbitration, et cetera, and he agreed to send his vice president to Washington to explore a diplomatic settlement.
Sure, so I'm just curious, but it depends on what his conditions are there, right? Like it super depends.
Well, we didn't know Israel attacked before the meeting ever happened, so we don't know. All we know is that it was reported he was open to UN world arbitration. He was also, although reports are conflicting here, he was also open to basically allowing oil to pass through pending the court's decision. So, I mean, we don't know exactly what is...
Yeah, I mean, if you can ever find me future contacts or throw me some book paths or something like that, I'd be interested in reading it. But yeah, I haven't heard much about this. So.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I mean, and
obviously... You got a third point or something, right?
Yeah, which is just that I don't think it was seriously thought that... that basically the Straits of Tiran, and we already went over the Straits of Tiran point in terms of its impact on the Israeli economy, but it certainly, but I guess to focus on the troop buildup, I don't think it was generally thought that there was a real threat of an attack, at least according to like a bunch of different like UN and US and Israeli officials at the time, giving their assessments at the available intelligence and so on.
Okay. You acknowledge that they also gave the exact same assessment prior to the Yom Kippur War, right? That there was no threat of an attack?
Yeah, I mean, yes, like intelligence assessments can go wrong sometimes,
Sure.
but like, and it's not just that intelligence said this, it was like Israeli officials said, we don't really think, so like, for example, and like other like UN officials as well. So like, for example, like, like, fuck, I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name, Menachem Begin, who was like a member of Begin, who was a member of the National Unity Government in June 1967, basically conceded in like a memoir that, quote, we had a choice. The Egyptian army concentrations in the Sinai approaches do not prove that Nasser was really about to attack us. We must be honest with ourselves. We decided to attack him. Abba Eban said like some similar things in his memoir that, Nasser didn't want war. He wanted victory without war. Even like Rabin, who was then chief of staff, told the Israeli cabinet that the Egyptian forces in the Sinai were still in a defensive posture. Obviously, U.S. President Johnson told Abba Eban that even after instructing his experts to analyze the situation and assume that all of the facts that Israelis gave them were true, it was, quote, their unanimous view that there is no Egyptian intention to make an imminent attack.
Yeah, I probably largely agree that Egypt wasn't about to attack Israel. Like within the month, probably not. Within the next couple of months, that's probably the case. But they knowingly closed those straits. Nasser has stated his goal is to destroy Israel. He said he knew that this was a provocation of war. He said that he began to build up a massive army, and he was shipping in tons of weapons from the Soviet Union. I think it's fair for Israel to one, feel like just the closure of the states, period, is already a provocation of war. We already feel that way, given that Nasser himself has said it, and a prior conflict has already been fought over these straits. Number one. And number two, that because of the continual attacks that were coming in to Israeli territory in every direction, which they had been by Fedayeen, that Israel was on its way towards an inevitable conflict, that was coming. Also, if they were closing the Straits of Tiran, what guarantee does Israel have that Egypt soon wouldn't also begin to block their ships from passing through the Suez Canal as well, right? So was Israel, and then keep in mind that at this point in history, Israel is basically on their own, right? They don't have like massive military support from basically anybody. That I don't know if Israel has a big, what?
No, I mean, I think there were Israeli intelligence, U.S. intelligence, and basically like Israeli and U.S. officials all said pretty unanimously that like not only did Nasser probably not intend to attack, but if he did, he would have gotten like wiped out like immediately. That was like the general consensus.
Yes, but again, that's what happened. But who knows if that would have been the case 6, 12, 18 months later.
No, it was also said by. It was also said that basically, so like this was a claim that Abba Eban made, which is that basically, there was like a dwindling, like Israel was getting weaker and the Arab states were getting longer. And so the longer it took for there to be a conflict, the worse off Israel would be. But again, like statements from Israeli officials, U.S. officials, and like U.S. and Israeli and UN intelligence said basically the exact opposite, that actually the Arab states were getting weaker as more time dwindled.
I would be really curious in hearing or seeing about that, because historically that's the opposite of what happened. I think that's the opposite feeling that they had of what was happening. And de facto, that is the opposite of what happened. That's why after the Yom Kippur War, Israel was so frightened by their neighbors that they started to look towards peaceful options more aggressively, because I don't think they felt like they could infinitely win wars against the surrounding Arab states.
Yeah, so hold on. I can find...
Also, keep in mind that predictions like 5 to 10 years into the future, especially from unstable states in the Middle East, especially during the Cold War, I don't know how valuable those are, or if you're an Israeli and you're trusting U.S. assessment that every country around you is going to grow weaker, I don't know if you would necessarily trust that, because again, it's your existence that's on the line, right?
Sorry, can you say that again?
I don't know if Israel would trust U.S. assessment that every single country in the region is going to just continue to dwindle or grow weaker in the area, to project that far into the future, especially in the 50s, 60s. I don't know if anybody would trust those types of projections, but...
Yeah, so I mean, firstly, Iban himself said that, reported that in the final days before the preemptive strike, Israel's, quote, military position became, quote, predictably better, and that that of Egypt unexpectedly worse. That's a direct quote. And that, quote, the Arab states were vastly enlarging their own vulnerability, and that, quote, stories of chaotic dislocation among Egyptian forces in the Sinai were becoming more frequent and authoritative, while equipment we previously ordered from Europe was reaching us every day.
Sure. Can you? Wait. If you have direct quotes, why can't you just link me like the sources of these, or how are you getting these quotes if you don't have the? Yeah, I don't understand.
Yeah, I can. Well, so I mean, I'm not. So a lot of this is going to come from like archival stuff that's like not as easy to pull up, but I can find you. I can actually link you the quotes for this. But also, I just wanted to note that Iban also cited a U.S. military intelligence review at the end of May, which found that, quote, the days and hours that were passing did not increase the inability of Israel to defend herself successfully, but on the contrary, it was Egyptian forces.
Yeah, I just want to see the. I'm just curious what the sourcing of this is. Yeah, if you have exact quotes, I don't know.
No, this was from.
Yeah, well, I'm curious, like, what are you reading from? Because if you have like the quotes in front of you, is it just like a notepad where you've written random stuff down, or like what is? I don't know what you're.
I have notepads with like quotes and like relevant points. But I mean, the source for this is literally just Iban's autobiography.
Well, but it's not. No. But I'm saying, like, what are you reading from? Because you're not reading from his autobiography right now.
No. I'm reading from my notes.
Okay.
Yeah. But no, you can read Personal Witness, page 401, Iban's autobiography, literally called Autobiography, page 380.
Wait, can you spell this guy's... Wait, spell this first guy's name for me.
Abba Iban, Abbaeban.
Okay, and what was the name of this book?
Well, there were two. One was called Personal Witness.
Wait. What's the book that you're citing, and what's the page?
Personal Witness, page 401.
Personal Witness. Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can find this. If I like get this book, do I get like an e-copy of it, or?
Sorry, what'd you say?
Asking my chat, if I buy this book on Amazon, do I get like an e-copy, or?
You could try and libgen it.
Iban 401, footnote 19. Fuck. I found another paper citing that page, but this is called In Search for Leverage, David versus Goliath in 1967. Oh, so this is probably pretty, I'm guessing this is favoring the Zionist narrative, but...
Yeah, probably. I sent you a list of the books and the pages from them just now over DMs if you want to look into this. If you don't want to like look into all this like on the spot, that's fine. If you wanted to like look more into it. But yeah, these are the books and the pages.
All right, hold on one second. Personal Witness, Through My Eyes. Use your free account to borrow this book and gain access to all pages. Can somebody link me, like, give me a picture of like 400 to 402? Oh wait, can you just send me screenshots of these pages?
I mean, I can try and dig back. Hold on.
Okay, wait. Where are you getting the information from?
So, I mean, it's not just like one place. It's going to be,
Well, no, but I'm asking, like, are you reading these entire autobiographies and these are the
no,
sources that you're writing
no.
down, or is there a YouTube video that's like citing these sources
No,
and you're
no.
giving me the
Well,
sources that it's citing?
no, well, it's neither. It's like if I'm reading something that cites like a book, I'll like look for the footnote and I'll try and find the book and find like the page. But usually, like I didn't read Aban's like entire autobiographies or anything. It's more like
So who
reading like
cited
various like articles.
Sure, so who cited page 401 here? Like, what's the source for the citation?
I'm just looking at my notes here. I don't remember which specific place I got. Like I can find you pretty easily, and I think you already said you did find people who did cite it and like articles that did cite it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know like which like article or book or whatever I got each quote from or whatever.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Recent downloads, home. Become a member to use fast downloads. Do I have to become a member to download from this shit? Fuck me, dude. Oh, wait. You need an EPUB reader. What the fuck is an EPUB reader? I sent you an EPUB, go look.
EPUB, I don't know if that works on computers. I only read EPUB on my phone, but we'll see.
Use slow download on archive. Send me the actual download link because I didn't see anything on that page that looked like a download thing. Caliber ebook. Oh my god. Download. Give me a page and I'll post pictures. I'm looking for pages 400 to 402. I'm also downloading an e-reader. Hold on. Oh. Okay, hold on. Chat's coming through. All right. Let's see. Personal witness. Okay. May 28th. Okay, so personal witness. Okay. Let me just read like 3 pages, okay?
Okay.
Okay. It was Barbour's message and Rusk's memorandum that induced Eshkol to refrain from drastic decision on May 28th. He now asked I think Eshkol is the Israeli prime minister at the time. During from 63 to 69, correct? Okay. Let's see. Eshkol refrained from drastic decision on May 28th. He now asked the cabinet to give the United States and others a chance for a few more days to succeed or to acknowledge failure in their efforts. Of the 18 ministers, only one transportation minister, Moshe Carmal, was prepared to vote for immediate military action. Wait, hold on. I'm sorry. I need the page before this as well. Wait, or can you send me the page right before this? Hold on, because this immediately makes it look like Israel was actually waiting for diplomatic action. But give me the page right before this, if you can. Or just Brandon or whoever else. Destiny, here is the previous page. Okay. Okay, Barber's report from the White House went on. Iban asked if he could tell his prime minister that President Johnson had decided to pursue every measure in his power to ensure that the Gulf and Straits would be open to free and innocent passage. The president had replied, yes. Iban is the foreign minister of Israel at the time, I believe, right? Foreign minister of Israel? Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. I now had the personal satisfaction of knowing that Johnson and I had understood each other perfectly. The exact wording of Johnson's assurance to me, according to which he would use any and all measures in his power to ensure that the Gulf and Straits are open to Israeli shipping, became an important issue during and after the Six-Day War. Those engaged in domestic political intrigue charged that Johnson had never made so far-reaching a promise. The May 28th communication now put this malicious rumor out of court, but it lingered on in some writings by some authors who were infected by the virulence of Israeli politics. In his own memoirs, 3 years later, President Johnson vindicated my report as recorded by Harman. He wrote, I said to Iban, you can assure the Israeli cabinet that we will pursue vigorously any and all possible measures to keep the strait open. Barbour was instructed to inform the Israeli government that there was a determination to make the International Maritime Plan work. The project was no longer described as a British plan, but as an enterprise to which the United States had committed its resolve. Barbour's dispatch repeated that the president had expressed fealty to the commitments that his predecessors had made. I was curious enough to speculate where, in the American bureaucracy, the medieval word fealty had originated. On the heels of this message from Barbour came a dispatch from Secretary Rusk on President Johnson's behalf. Its central theme was that the British and we are proceeding urgently to prepare military aspects of the International Naval Escort Plan, and other nations are responding vigorously to the idea. The Canadians and the Dutch were said to have offered ships even before the proposed declaration of the maritime powers was formulated for a ratification. As a sequel to the indecisive meeting on the night of Saturday, May 27th, the cabinet assembled the next morning and remained in almost constant session. After the demarque by Barbour and the note from Secretary Rusk came a letter from President Johnson. Real quick, this is being written by Abba Iban. Is this the foreign minister, somebody of Turkey, or who is this guy again?
Are you asking about Abba Iban?
Yeah, or wait, who is this guy? What is his role?
No, Ibn Iban was an Israeli diplomat. He was a politician. He was the former foreign minister.
Oh, sorry. Okay, this is the okay. So at the time of this is a foreign minister for Israel, correct? Mm-hmm. Sorry, Iban. I'm sorry. I meant it's his book. Okay, gotcha. All right. Yeah. So he's referring to himself in the third person up here when he says Iban asked if he could tell his prime minister. Okay. Okay, no. After the demo, okay. I repeat even more strongly what I said yesterday to Mr. Iban. Israel just must not take preemptive military action and thereby make itself responsible for the initiation of hostilities. There was no doubt on May 28th that the United States and Britain had seriously envisaged an international action against Nasser in the Straits. Some ministers who had worried lest I had overestimated this intention now reproached me for not having given it sufficient weight. The cautious accuracy of what I had reported was vindicated on the morning of May 28th when Secretary of State Dean Rusk had sent his urgent dispatch in which he reported what he called substantial progress in the organization of an international assault on Nasser's blockade. The reality of a Western plan to break Nasser's blockade had never come to more concrete or precise expression. It would soon emerge that the hour of grace for the Armada program would be fleeting. It was our interest to let it take its course. Okay. It was Barbour's message and Rusk's memorandum that induced Eshkol to refrain from drastic decision on May 28th. He now asked the cabinet to give the United States and others a chance for a few more days to succeed or to acknowledge failure. In their efforts, of the 18 ministers, only one, the transportation minister Moshe Carmel, was prepared to vote for immediate military action. Later that day, Eshkol informed senior military officers that a further delay period would be necessary. Some of them warned him that every hour was working against Israel. I, on the other hand, was hearing from more military attaches stories of chaotic dislocation among Egyptian forces in the Sinai. I also learned that military equipment previously ordered by us from Europe was reaching us. The French pipeline was yielding abundant material, as if someone in Paris had not heard of the de Gaulle's strictures. While most of our senior officers accepted the prime minister's decision with a disciplined serenity, others created a tempestuous scene. Iser Weitzman, I think, had taken off his epaulets and thrown them in disgust to the ground. Eshkol was shaken, but he showed his maturity by believing that a soldier's advice was not necessarily the last national word. But someone had to tell the Israeli people what its own government's intentions were. Eshkol decided to do it himself. Even his most devoted supporters had never applauded Eshkol for eloquence. He was also suffering from fatigue. The scene with the army officers had undermined his nerves. A dry, legalistic jumble of words had been written for him by Minister Yisrael Galilee, who was notorious for his unlimited capacity for platitude. Cliches used to fall from Galilee's mouth and pen like autumn leaves, and with the same absence of utility. Never would a visionary idea or an original turn of phrase cast a beam of illumination on his prose. Galilee had introduced into Eshkol's text some semantic ingenuities that nobody but he could have ever understood. Eshkol came to the puzzling word, an unusual transitive verb for withdrawing. He paused and stammered. His hesitancy was not about his own determination, but about Galilee's syntax. It must have been the only occasion in history in which a hesitant stutter resounded throughout the entire world. The Israeli nation would have responded well to a reasoned justification for limited delay to be followed by a clarion call to our people to mobilize its energies and prepare for the eventual confrontation. It would have been welcomed, a Churchillian promise of blood, sweat, and tears. These had always been commodities that an Israeli prime minister could supply. The nation was not prepared for a depressing routine announcement for postponement, recited with what seemed to be a lack of coherence and courage. It's hard to describe the alarm and despondency that swept through the country. For 3 wasteful days, the theme of the nation's life was not the need for intensified preparation for an ordeal that was bound to come. The issue was whether Eshkol should be the leader of our resistance. As defense minister, as well as prime minister, he had 2 overlapping constituencies: the entire nation and the military establishment. With a great number of citizens away from home and family, subject to unaccustomed inactivity in military positions, the morale of the troops was an anguished problem that Israelis had never known before. Eshkol's stammer inevitably reinforced the opposition's efforts to challenge the national leadership. Meanwhile, a cascade of dangerous developments in the international domain fell upon us like tropical rain. Arab arrogance increased. The United Nations revealed spectacular ineptitude, and domestic nervousness became extreme. Whatever it was that had led Johnson and Russ to proclaim the success of the maritime effort vanished from view in a matter of days. The week between May 28th and June 5th was full of crowded, intertwining events crisscrossing each other like a cobweb. It's difficult to place them in any sequential order. Within a few days of its communications of May 28th, which had produced a nearly unanimous Israeli position in favor of a short delay, the Johnson administration was beating a sharp retreat from the maritime plan. By June 1st, Johnson was writing to Eshkol, "We are exploring on an urgent basis the British suggestion of an international naval presence in the Sea of the Straits of Tiran. As I said to Mr. Iban, there is, however, doubt that a number of other maritime powers would be willing to take steps of this nature unless and until the United Nations processes had been exhausted." In a move towards disengagement, the U.S. was awarding the authorship of the maritime plan to the British. The UN processes mentioned in U.S. statements had not merely been exhausted, they had expired. U.S. hesitancy had caused a corresponding limitation of British resolve. On May 31st, the British Foreign Secretary, George Brown, had given the British commitment a more limited interpretation than had Wilson on May 24th. Brown now said, "We regard the United Nations as primarily responsible for peacekeeping. The powers have the habit of describing the United Nations as an entity separate from themselves, as though we're able to deploy energies beyond those with which member states endowed them." Okay, so I can continue to read on from here, and I probably will after we finish talking, just because I'm interested. But it sounds like the quotation from wherever you got this, was, it seems to me, unless I'm completely misunderstanding, was taken horrendously out of context to the point of bad faith. It sounds like on May 28th, there was hope for some sort of diplomatic thing, and Eshkol had been convinced as much, but that hope seemed to evaporate in the coming days, and everybody else seemed to agree as much. Do you disagree with my interpretation, or tell me?
Wait, sorry, can you say that again? I wasn't listening when you were for most of the. So just tell me what you're. Yeah,
so basically, it seemed to be the case that there was actual hope initially that the United States would resolve these issues diplomatically. However, it seemed like in the coming days, that hope quickly vanished from the United States itself, and then correspondingly to Israeli leaders as well. That it seems like all that hope basically disappeared, and the messaging changed quite a bit.
Sorry, are we talking about with respect to Nasser sending his vice president to Washington? Are we talking about after that breakthrough happened?
I have no idea. The original argument that you'd given me in support of Israeli territorial expansionism was that the Six-Day War that they preemptively attacked on was actually done in contrast to the diplomatic efforts that were happening in the background, that Israel knew or had good reason to believe that a diplomatic solution was on the way, which would undermine their justification for a preemptive war on June 5th in 67. However, as I read the quote that you gave me was, and that quote is in here, the quote that you had given me was that we were very close to a really good breakthrough in the UN, that we were really close to a breakthrough. Fuck, where's the exact quote? Wait. Give me 1 second.
Oh, wait, so we're talking about the diploma. Okay. I mean, I think this is irrelevant now to so we can continue along the trend while we're talking about, but I think I might have, I thought we were talking about a different claim, which was about whether.
Well, here, so this is President Johnson vindicated my report as recorded by Harman. He wrote, I said to Iban, you can assure the Israeli cabinet that we will pursue vigorously any and all possible measures to keep the Strait open. The project was no longer described as a British plan, fuck the British, but as an enterprise to which the United States, our heroes, had committed its resolve. And then basically this is the diplomat saying that, like, bro, the U.S. is on this. This is going to get figured out diplomatically. Thank God. It's a really, really good thing. But then it seems to be that in the coming days, that hope disappeared, which makes it sound like there was a breakdown of diplomatic relations, and that the diplomatic solution seemed like
Okay, so, I mean, the first thing I would note is that if there was a claim that there was a breakdown of hope, that's like not inconsistent with what I said, which is that to the extent that there basically was at various points in the conflict, points in which hope was building for a diplomatic settlement.
Correct.
And then there were
but while hope was failed, but the important part is that
it failed, it was because of Israel.
But there's no evidence of that. It sounds like, if anything, now that I've read what you've quoted from, it sounds like the exact opposite. It sounds like there was diplomatic pressure, and that Israel literally said, okay, well, let's pause. That Eshkol was literally fighting his military cabinet and making speeches to the country saying, we're going to wait and see what happens because we're waiting for the United States to resolve the issue diplomatically.
No, okay, so I mean, Eshkol might have wanted that, right? But like the fact is, and this is reported by like UN Secretary General, et cetera, basically like, like Oddball reported this, Usant reported this, that.
Okay, well, if you want, real quick. If you want, you can give me the next quote of the next passage and we can read that. But the characterization that I've gotten in this book is the exact opposite from what the quote you gave me from was. Literally the exact opposite.
I don't see how.
Did you, I guess you didn't listen to anything I said?
Well, I did listen to what you said, but you just didn't really say anything that was in tension with anything that I said that I was able to detect. Like you said that like Eshkol, like what I got from what you said is that Eshkol wanted there to be like a pause.
Which there was, yeah.
Which there was, sure. And what I said was that, so I appealed to numerous things. I appealed to Arab openness to station EIAMC troops. I appealed to the deal proposed by Usant that would basically have there be a 2-week pause and a freeze on the Straits of Tehran situation, and then like the appointment of like a UN.
I would be well. Like so, we can.
In what you read, right?
Yep.
Did any of those examples that I cite, all of those examples where there were attempts at diplomacy, rejected by Israel.
No. Hold on. To
Many
be
of
clear,
which are sent by Arab leaders. Did that page contradict any of that?
yes.
Any of those
so the
examples?
first thing was breakdowns of negotiations. I don't think they happened by Israel, or at the very least, this book that I'm reading, which was by the Israeli diplomat. So we could argue maybe this is pro-Zionist or bias, but it seems like nothing here shows it breaking down the Israeli part. It seems like it's breaking down on the Egyptian-U.S. part, and it says as much in here. Meanwhile, a cascade of disastrous developments in the international domain fell upon us like tropical rain. Arab arrogance increased, the United Nations revealed spectacular ineptitude, and domestic nervousness became extreme. Whatever it was that had led Johnson, the U.S. president, and Russ to proclaim the success of the maritime effort vanished from view in a matter of days. The week between May 28th, which is when they said that we were close to figuring something out, and June 5th was full of June 5th, the start of the 7-day war, right? Or 6-day war, vanished from view in a matter of days.
Sorry, wait, can you repeat the last part?
I'm sorry. The week between May 28th and June 5th was full of crowded, intertwining events crisscrossing each other like a cobweb. It's difficult to place them in any order. Within a few days of its communications of May 28th, which had produced a nearly unanimous Israeli position in favor of a delay of military action, right? Delay of military action. The Johnson administration was beating a sharp retreat from the maritime plan. By June 1st, Johnson, the U.S. president, was writing, "We're exploring on an urgent basis the British suggestion of an international naval presence in the area of the Straits of Tiran. As I said to Mr. Iban, there is, however, doubt that a number of other maritime powers would be willing to take steps of this nature unless and until the United Nations processes have been exhausted." So it sounds like on May 28th, the United States was like, we're going to fix this shit. We're going to figure it out. I promise we're going to figure it out. And then basically in a day or two, the U.S. was like, well, we're talking to the British to hopefully have some kind of presence here, but right now things are looking shaky. That's what it sounds like is being said here. And that's how much the diplomat is interpreting it as such. And then the U.S. has backed away from this and handed it over to the UN, So
I didn't hear... Well, so there's... I mean, I guess a couple of things I did. One is that I didn't hear really blame be explicitly laid on the feet of Egypt.
Okay, hold on. Well, I hadn't gotten there. I was giving you the reversal of the plans, but we can go into Egyptian posturing as well. The most serious aggravation of our condition came on May 30th when King Hussein from Jordan, right, flew to Cairo to sign a defense pact with Nasser. Article 7 of the pact placed his troops under Egyptian command. This was a sensational development. Its effects would be no less profound and even more lasting than anything that we might face on the Egyptian front. A few days before, Nasser had been calling Hussein the Hashemite harlot. The Arabs often define themselves as a family, and the speed of their transitions from mutual abuse to reconciliation conforms with this metaphor. Their rancors are virulent but can be quickly transcended, especially in common resistance to non-Arab adversaries. The notion of a united Arab world rising to attempt Israel's destruction had sustained Arab dreams and Israeli fears for many years. Now it had begun to take shape and form. I felt that our fortunes were declining and our flame was burning low. I had written a few years before in a much plagiarized passage that, quote, "Nothing divides the Arab world more than the attempt to unite it," end quote. My view and experience tell me that the overriding reality about the Arab world is fragmentation, diversity, and strong rival bids for hegemony. Now and again, however, an atavistic pull and a sudden sense of opportunity create transient attempts at union. I can continue to read, but that defensive pact was a pretty big deal because now that Egypt was blocking their straits and they were setting up a defensive front and they created a peace agreement, Egyptian commanders would also be in charge of Jordanian troops. So now you have a united front border that Israel is facing against a country that's clearly provoking it to go to war, right?
Yeah, so, I mean, one thing that's worth noting is, like, basically what they're citing as reason for the breakdown of diplomacy was the agreement of the Jordanian front to join in. Now, I mean, what's worth noting about that is, like, for example, like Eric Hamill, right? Like, the Jordanian, this was like not a real threat. Like the Jordanian infantry was armed like mainly with like British rifles of World War II vintage.
Okay, hold on. Can you link me that quote? Can you link me that quote? I want to read that passage next. Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. I can link you that quote. Sure.
Okay.
But like, what I'm just trying to say more generally right now is like, sure, like, so...
No, wait. I understand what you're saying. I reject the general narratives because the general narrative that you're giving me was in opposition to the general narrative that I understood, which is okay, but now as I'm investigating the sources you're sending me, they seem to fully reinforce the narrative that I was giving and counter yours. So I don't want a narrative view of yours. I want an actual book passage that I can read.
I want to explicitly reject what you just said,
okay.
Which is that the source that I gave you supported, well, conditional on... So like basically we find the quote, and then you find some other part of the book that makes like separate claims that backs up your side.
Wait. To be clear, hold on, wait.
Wait.
I didn't find a separate part of the book. This is why I asked for the page before and after, and then I asked for the other page before, because I wanted to get the full context of what was said. I'm reading exactly from the part of the book that you said was quoted for whatever source you were reading to prove that Israel was actually at fault for the disintegration of...
I think this might be partially a confusion. I thought that I sent you this, or I think maybe I got the page wrong. If I got the page wrong, I can try and
worse than that. No, wait.
I think what happened was that I thought you wanted a source for the
wait. Hold on. We're just going.
Army was dwindling.
No. I'm just going through. You linked me 3 different pages or 3 different sources, and I wanted to go through one at a time of the things you sent me to investigate the quotes to see if the actual context around the material supported what you were saying. That's what I was curious about. Now, the first one you gave me, there is the quote in there that you referenced about how they were... The quote that you referenced about them being really close to coming to an agreement, that quote was in here. So your quote was here, but...
I don't think I referenced that page as a defense of that quote. I mean, the relevance of these pages were like, okay, so I mean, we had like this claim that I don't know. I think maybe I just got the page wrong, because I don't think I cited Iban as saying, no, I didn't cite Iban as saying that as my sources that there was like we were close to a diplomatic solution. I cited like U.S. officials and USAN. I don't know. I think maybe
the quote I believe the quote you're referring to was literally in his own memoirs 3 years later. President Johnson vindicated my report as quoted by Harman. He wrote, "I said to Iban, you can assure the Israeli cabinet that we will pursue vigorously any and all possible measures to keep the strait open." The quote seemed to reinforce the fact that there was a diplomatic solution on the way. That's what the quote seems to say. But the problem is this dissolved in 3 days. So whoever gave you this quote either didn't read past that, or they were quote mining for things that agreed with them, and they didn't actually bother to investigate the context around the quote.
No, I never. No, this isn't what happened. I think what happened.
You can give me the next quote. We can go to the next thing then, if you want.
But. No, it's not. No. Why are you trying to like? That's very weird. Like the way you're kind of trampling. But like, no. The point is, no. There is a confusion, right? Basically is my point. I didn't cite Ebba Iban as saying that we were close to a diplomatic breakthrough. What was happening was I was trying to cite Ebba Iban as one of the people who said that there wasn't credibility to the narrative that over time in the build-up to the 1967 war, the Egyptian military capacity was dwindling the Israeli military capacity was dwindling relative to Egypt. I was denying that claim, and I gave an Iban quote in defense of that claim.
Okay, sure, that might be the case. Okay, yeah, maybe I misunderstood. I probably misunderstood then. So
probably I gave you the wrong page, I think.
Sure. Well, so you copy-pasted this from somewhere. Why not just copy-paste your notes around this quote? Because I can see that you are like copy-pasting this from another document. Just copy-paste me like the notes that you've got written around this particular...
Yeah, okay, sure. Mm-hmm. That's fine.
Yeah. And then I can see, because we can just read your notes to see exactly what you were sourcing, right?
Yeah, sure. Well, I gave you... Okay, sorry. Sure. Hold on. Okay, so... Okay, so wait. Oh, okay. Which page were you looking at?
Just looking at our messages. The very first one was page 401 is what you gave me.
Okay, I definitely gave you the wrong pages. That's my bad.
Did you have the wrong pages written in your notes?
Yep.
Okay.
Wait, hold on. I think I can figure this out, though. Okay. No, I think this is right. Okay, hold on. Yeah, okay, so Finkelstein cites... Okay, right. Okay, so these... Here's a list of pages that Finkelstein cites giving the same quote that I gave. The same quotes that I gave about the Israeli... the relative diminishment of Israeli and Egyptian military capacities in the leading up to the Six-Day War. So I'm assuming that these are the right pages.
Okay. Can somebody give me oof, I can already tell the scholarship. I can already tell. Okay. Even before we read these, I'm going to make a prediction, and then I'm going to issue a criticism, and then we'll look these up, and we'll see if they're incorrect. Okay.
Okay.
So my guess is Finkelstein, who I understand is a preeminent kind of like anti-Zionist narrative author, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's okay to have scholarship on the other side pushing back on this. But if you're telling me that he's giving a citation to the military prowess of Israel at the time, right? That's what he's trying to make the argument for. It's a little bit suspect to me that he's linking Ibn's autobiography. It might be that Ibn has really good statements on this. However, I see that the source for this you've given me is 2 separate pages, 352 to 371. I hope that when we read these pages in the book, it's not just Ibn mentioning in like a couple sentences these things, and it's a little bit more of an in-depth explanation, because I feel like this might not be the most appropriate source to consider Israel's military capability at the time. However, I could be wrong. Maybe the source here is actually incredibly well written, but it's a little bit, I feel like there might be better stuff that you could source if you're trying to make a strong argument here. But I could be wrong, but let's check. Okay, so for Ibn's autobiography, the 2 pages listed right now are 352 and 371. Can somebody give me the sources of pages 351, 352, 353, and then 370 to 372? I'd be interested in seeing those 6 pages. Also, can you throw them up in an album for me so I can just click one link and then go check it all? Is this Ibn or Abba Ibn a biography? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Hold on, I'm so sorry. The second one, wait. The first one is the autobiography. The second one is called Personal Witness. Fuck. You guys already had the book Personal Witness, right? I'm sorry. For Personal Witness, can you guys give me the pages 380 to 386? That's what I need. There's a book called Autobiography where he cites page 352 and 371, but that's in a different book called Autobiography. I can send you the entire autobiography. Well, fucking email it to me if you got it all, I guess.
If you get the full autobiography, maybe you can just Control F some of the specific quotes.
Also, wait, hold on 1 second. Okay, remember, holy shit, I'm so glad I had this conversation, okay? A few days ago, I said something, and people got really mad at me. A few days ago, I said, I personally, if you want to cite Wikipedia, but do not go to Wikipedia and then click through to the links and cite the underlying material. Don't do that. I don't want to think that you research the underlying material and that's not an honest citation. Only cite the underlying material if you search for it on your own or you've read the entire thing. This is the issue that we're running into right now. My guess is going to be Mouthy Infidel hasn't read any of this. What he's actually doing is he's citing the footnotes of Finkelstein's book, and he's pretending, or he's kind of implying that he's the one that read the underlying material, but he probably hasn't read any underlying material. He's just citing Finkelstein. But he's not citing Finkelstein, he's citing his quote. He's citing his footnotes. This is why I'm saying don't ever do that. Always be familiar with the underlying material or research on your own. Don't just cite compilation materials, footnotes, and pretend that they're your own footnotes. I think that's a really bad habit to get into. I'm so glad I had this example of this because we got into that argument a while ago on the Wikipedia stuff. Okay, hold on. We're searching. We're looking for the book. Destiny, check email. All right. Wait, Brandon, did you email my Stephen Bunnell email or did you email the contact Destiny GG one? Hold on a second. Send autobiography to contact email. Hold up.
Oh, people are telling me that you were like muting me and dogging on me to your stream.
No. I wasn't particularly dogging you. Well, maybe I should have said it on mute. I think that when people argue, one thing I hear people say about Wikipedia a lot is like, well, Wikipedia is okay because you can always just like read the underlying sources and cite them. And what I said was, if you're doing research on like on a thing like Wikipedia, you should just cite Wikipedia directly, because it gives the reader a better understanding of where your information is coming from than citing the underlying footnotes if you haven't searched for them yourself or if you haven't read the entire underlying footnote. Because I feel like what's happening here is, I'm guessing that you probably, if I'm giving you the most credit I can right now, it's that you probably did read the Finkelstein book. I'm hoping you read the book and not just passages, but you read the book and now you're giving me his footnotes, but you haven't actually examined the underlying footnotes yourself. So now this is like the uncomfortable process of digging through to see if Finkelstein's work or summary of the footnotes actually agrees with what the underlying material says, which is, I'm not sure if it will or not, but we'll see.
Okay, I mean, some of the stuff, most of the stuff I've cited, like I've found the original sources. Some of them are like quote.
Well, you say you found the original sources, but you have no pictures. You got no way to send it to me. You don't have the books on hand. What does that mean when you say you found the original sources?
Well, I said for most of the things that I've cited, and I have been able to send you. Have been able to elaborate on some of the things when you've asked me about them.
Well, I'm not asking for elaborations. I'm asking for like the actual underlying material so that I can read it myself. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. And I mean, for the record, I already said, right, if you remember earlier in the conversation, I said I didn't read Aband's autobiography. And
well, you said you didn't read his whole autobiography.
Yeah.
But you haven't read any of the autobiography. You're reading Finkelstein's summary of his autobiography, a couple lines. Right. It's okay to say, yeah, I read Wikipedia. That's all of my shit. I'm not reading unless I feel like I need to. I'm not reading underlying source material.
Well, I mean, it's kind of true, but it's like a bit like I don't know. I mean, the research process is kind of like I try to go as deep as I can. If there's something that I like can't find, I just like write down the quote, and I write down like the page in the book that the quote is supposedly from, that I've seen cited by like secondhand sources, in referencing those quotes, so that if somebody else wants to say, where did you get this from, I can show that to them, and then maybe if they want to scrutinize it. Yeah,
but I feel like it'd be better to just say like, I got this from Finkelstein, right?
I think I did say that. I said that
you
earlier.
didn't until we spent like
I said hour. I read the quote. I said I read the quote in the paper. I said I read the quote in a paper. I said I didn't read. This was before you started scrutinizing the sources.
Oh, okay. Maybe I misheard that then, or I didn't understand that. Okay. I said specifically a lot of these quotes I've gotten from books or papers, different books or papers. Well, quotes from books or papers are different versus.
No, I said I got it from a secondary source.
Okay. I feel like I didn't hear that, but maybe it was.
At least some of them.
Okay.
I didn't say it was Finkelstein, but
okay.
I did. Yeah.
All right, let's see. Okay, I've got this whole book.
Okay.
Personal witness, is that what this is? Okay. You want me to go to page 382. Scroll. Do you need the autobiography? Yeah, just Brandon, but you have to send it to my original email, not my contact one. I can't get into that one right now. That's what Nina reads. Okay. We're doing 382 to 385. Resending. Okay, I'm going to read from page, halfway through page 380. Wait, why is this not working? Oh, okay, Jesus. Okay, there we go. Thank you. Okay, after a 7-hour flight, I reached Kennedy Airport on the morning of May 25th. So this would be about 10 days. How many days are in May before the Six-Day War? 3 days before the quotes that we had on page 400 or so. Okay. I was met by Ambassador Gideon Raphael and the minister of our embassy, Epi Evron. Again, I had to encounter the press and television. Asked whether I was requesting American soldiers to risk their lives for Israel, I stated that we would not ask nor expect that to happen, no matter what occurred. I repeated that I had come to seek U.S. respect for Israel's right of self-defense. Ambassador Harman briefed me in my hotel. That morning, before going to Canada, President Johnson made a speech condemning Egypt's blockade. The New York Times reporter at the White House had been told that on the basis of what I had said in London, Israel could be held back for only a matter of days at the most. 87 members of the Congress had signed a statement denouncing Nasser and calling on President Johnson to support Israel. So far, so good. I also learned during my first hour in Washington that Harold Wilson's emissary, George Thompson, had arrived with a high naval officer, Admiral E. Henderson. Wait, fuck, this is so confusing. Had arrived 379, 380. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Had arrived with a high naval officer, Admiral E. Henderson, and had received the approval of Dean Rusk for a project under which an international group of ships with naval escort would sail through the Straits of Tiran in defiance of Nasser's blockade. It was evident that approval of this plan would require presidential and congressional sanction. The congressional mood, influenced by Vietnam traumas, was more hesitant than that of the executive branch. In the light of these movements and attitudes, it's clear that those in Israel and elsewhere who have asserted that there was never a serious plan to break the blockade under international authority are quite mistaken. But the relative simplicity of the logistic aspect could not obscure the gravity of the political decision that could come only from the president himself. At this point, however, I had one of the severest shocks of my life. Harman produced a cable from Tel Aviv stating that Egyptian troop concentrations in the Sinai were dense. Egyptian airfields were on the alert, and an Egyptian surprise attack was expected. I was asked to convey all of this to the White House in the most drastic and emotional terms and ask if the United States would regard an attack on Israel as an attack on itself. This cable sticks in my mind as an act of momentous irresponsibility. There had been no new developments in the military alignment since I had sat with our advisors on May 22nd and listened to their plea for delay in order to get our troops into position in the south. On the other hand, there were reports of Egyptian forces strung out across the Sinai becoming entangled in logistic confusions that would greatly increase their vulnerability. So as a quick aside, this is something that we read about for Eshkol when the events leading up to this were happening. I think we'd read that, I don't remember whose plan it was. I don't know if it was Eshkol himself or somebody else, but I think they had said that they tried to communicate basically bullshit to the foreign minister to try to get him to pressure Washington to take a more aggressive stance on Israel. I do remember we went over that, and it seems like that's what this here is referencing. However, I hope there's more in here about Egypt's military capabilities than just Eshkol's statement here, but let's keep going. All right. Egyptian airfields. What? Sorry, go ahead.
Can you control F at all? If you want to read the surrounding context, but if you can't find the quote, would you be able to control F for the specific quotes that I referenced?
I just read the quote. I think that was it.
The quote which said the days and hours.
I think. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'll get to that quote. But the one quote I just read was, on the other hand, there were reports of Egyptian forces strung out across the Sinai becoming entangled in logistic confusions that would have greatly increased their vulnerability.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's part of it.
And then we keep going. I have always believed in the axiom that it is the duty of soldiers to exaggerate their dangers. Military commanders have a professional commitment to anxiety. But it's the duty of ministers not to take reports of such dangers on trust. Someone, however, had obviously convinced some of our military leaders that it would be tactically wise to give the U.S. an apprehensive picture of our alleged weakness and to ask its government to do what it had no constitutional right even to consider. For the United States to say that an attack on Israel is an attack on the U.S., it would have had to undertake a national debate in the Senate and in the public forum for weeks or months. Meanwhile, this eccentric cable meant exchanging an attitude of resolve, such as that which I had expressed in Paris and London, for one of our apparent weakness. Instead of being a strong nation announcing its rights to act, we were presenting ourselves as a quivering victim of an imminent attack, the prospect of which had not been proven to anybody. So this is at the end of page 381. I can go forward to page, the next one is you give me is 385 is the next quote, I think. Let me go to 385. 380. Okay, I'm just going to read from page 384. The American leaders told me that their studies indicated that. Oh no, wait. Actually, let me back up to the paragraph here. Hearing Secretary McNamara and General Wheeler's comment, I felt that the Jerusalem cable had eroded our position. It had resulted in a purely diplomatic gesture from Washington that was probably superfluous and had conveyed a diminished picture of Israeli power. The American military leaders told me that their studies indicated that Israel would win if there was a war, no matter who had the initiative in the air. They believed that if Egypt made the first strike, Israel would win in 2 weeks. If Israel were to make the first strike, the war would be over in a week. The reports from the Middle East indicated logistics confusion in the Egyptian camp. Israel's lines of supply and communications were short and efficient. Egypt's were a nightmare of distance and complexity. Israel's immediate security was in good shape. Egyptian difficulties would grow every hour. Israel's air superiority was great and beyond dispute. None of them thought that Israel was being outmaneuvered in the military domain and therefore would have to act in a mood of now or never. I now felt that the crux of Israel's short-term predicament was the divergence between Jerusalem's estimate and that of Washington concerning our security position. If the Pentagon was right, and Israel's military success in any confrontation with Egypt was probable in all contingencies of time, it would be irresponsible not to seek political understandings with the U.S. and also to think and plan for our ability to hold on after victory. I found the tone and quality of the U.S. military exposition to be impressive. I did not believe that McNamara and Wheeler would risk their professional reputations by making an appraisal that could easily be refuted by events. I also felt that they wished Israel well and that they had interest in maintaining American credibility by honoring commitments. Okay, so this is basically the summary of this is Eshkol saying that the American appreciation of the situation that was that if a war were to occur immediately, Israel would probably win the war in about a week, which seems to be true. However, that quote of every hour, Egypt would grow weaker or whatever, that's not in reference to the future of Egypt. That's only in reference to if a military conflict were to happen immediately.
Wait, sorry. Can you say that again?
Yeah, that this quote of Egyptian difficulties would grow every hour, that wasn't a quote about Egypt into the future. That was just a quote if a military conflict happened right now.
No, yeah. So I think what I quoted was okay. So yeah. So Egyptian difficulties would quote it every hour. Yeah, but I mean, there was I don't know. I think I take it that the passage you read seemed to largely be in line with what I said, which is that you made the claim that over time, Israel's capabilities were weakening and Egypt's were getting better. And if anything, the U.S. intelligence review suggests the opposite, that the days and hours that were passing did not increase the inability of Israel to defend herself, and that, on the contrary, it was Egyptian forces who were increasing their vulnerability. So I'm just saying, there seems to be no evidence for the original claim you made, and if anything,
wait, hold on. No. Nothing about this conversation, nothing about this part of the situation had to do with long-term security or long-term military capabilities of the Egyptian army. That statement about vulnerability and everything, and that they would have grown weaker by the hours, that had to do with if a war were to happen right now.
Wait, no, it said no. Okay, sorry. Can you reread the part about Egyptian forces increasing their vulnerability?
Hold on.
So you're saying your interpretation of this is that the military intelligence report only had to do with if a war were to break out right now.
Correct.
Subsequent to that,
yes,
Egypt would weaken and Israel would become more powerful.
Yes.
Okay.
You want me to find the quote about vulnerabilities?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it not showing up in the control F? Fuck. Okay, hold on. What page was this? Page 400. Oh, also that vulnerabilities quote, I believe that was about Egypt. That was about Israeli intelligence, not American. 382. Okay. So
wait. So
okay.
I think so. It seems like it might be our disconnect here. So you're saying the quotes about Israel's military position became predictably better and that of Egypt became unexpectedly worse, right? in these kinds of quotes. So my interpretation is that they were about like, okay, so like what you're saying is true, like to some extent, if the war were to break out right now. But like my interpretation was that it had to do with like over time it became over time it was becoming more and more likely.
That quote, what you're saying right there doesn't even make sense, right? So the quote here is, on the other hand, there were reports of Egyptian forces strung out along the Sinai becoming entangled in logistic confusions that would greatly increase their vulnerability. This is, my guess is going to be, this is going to...
So over time, the Egyptian forces were increasing their vulnerability. This was a recent development.
Correct. Right? Yes. Egypt positioning their army in the Sinai was a recent development. And over time, meaning in the following days, their vulnerability would become increased. That's not true for the coming months. Obviously, Egypt would sort out its supply lines and everything in the coming months as the positioning of the army became more permanent or more time passed, right? This is just a statement on what's happening right now, not saying that like their position is become more vulnerable months and months in the future. It doesn't make sense, right?
So sure, if you want to like, if you just want to say like we can't extrapolate from like the current kind of, so what you initially said was that correct me if I'm wrong, your original statement was that Israel's position was becoming worse and Egypt's was becoming better. Is that not what you said?
I don't know if I believe that. My position was that Egypt was probably planning to attack, and that if they weren't going to right then, that Egypt's position would improve into the future for sure. I don't know if Egypt's position is improving in like a week or two, and I don't even know I think, because I read a lot of quotes too saying that they didn't think an attack was going to happen immediately, but that in the months coming, that if an attack would have happened, that Israel's position could have significantly gotten worse.
I took it that what you were saying was that Israel's position was getting worse, and Egypt's position was getting better, which, you know, you can say like if we extrapolate into the future, maybe that doesn't continue, but at the time that was the trend, was that Egypt's forces were
no, hold on, that's not a no, that's not a trend. The trend was that Egypt was growing in military strength. They had been importing more and more supplies from the Soviet Union. Later on, they signed a defensive pact with Jordan and took control. The trend was them increasing. The vulnerability was just a short-term thing that was happening as they were deploying forces across the Sinai. That's not a trend.
Well, what the trend is just depends on what time horizon you're like quantifying over.
Okay, the time horizon is longer than 1 month, right?
Sure, but what I'm saying is that in recent developments, Egypt's forces had been getting weaker. Israel's forces had been getting stronger. I was just taking issue with, I thought you had made the claim that Israel's forces were getting weaker and Egypt's were getting stronger.
Yes, that is my claim. That is my claim.
They were going to.
Yeah, my claim is that was the fear of Israel, that building armament on the Egyptian side, a unification of Egyptian and Jordanian forces, and a massive deployment of Soviet weaponry into the region would increase Egyptian and Jordanian power over the time, and that unified front would be catastrophic for Israel in the future. Yes.
Sorry, okay, so your claim is that it was the Israeli concern that in the future, Egypt was going to get stronger and Israel was going to get weaker.
Yes, so they've put themselves on a collision course. Yes.
Okay, I mean, I guess that differs from my interpretation of what you were saying in like a couple of respects. Namely, one, that I thought you were affirming that it was the case that by the time the 6-Day War had started, Egypt's forces were getting stronger, Israel's forces were getting weaker.
Well, hold on, wait, you keep saying Israel's forces were getting weaker. I don't think Israel's forces are ever getting weaker. I don't know if I ever said that statement. But just that Egypt was taking increasingly aggressive, I mean...
Israel had gotten like less able to, was getting less able to fend off an attack.
Well, sure, but that's because of the fact that the other side was building in power, right? Like it necessarily follows from the first. Like if two militaries are getting stronger, but one is getting more stronger than the other, you'd say one is getting stronger and one is less able to defend itself, right?
Okay, do you have evidence? So I'm not sure about this part, but do you have evidence that the Israeli military was getting, the Egyptian military was growing in strength at a faster rate than the Israeli one?
Let's see. My understanding was that prior to the 6-Day War, Egypt had begun to ship in like increasingly more supplies from the Soviet Union, that these shipments were increasing quite a bit, and that I think the Soviet Union was taking a greater interest in the region as well. But give me a second. I'll see what I wrote down for notes, and if I don't have any notes, we can go look up more. Oh, also there was a fear, I think, there was a fear in Israel because I think France had just basically said, we're not going to sell you weapons anymore as well, which I think happened in 66, but oh wait, this is the Suez Crisis prior to the So let's see. I've written here that in 64, Egypt, Jordan, and Syria had developed a unifying military command, meaning that that's a unified front facing Israel. Then let's see. In May of 67, Nasser mobilizes his people. He dumps those people. Oh, this is just a summary. Let's see. Oh, Iraq was also deploying troops in Jordan too. Iraq was sending troops down to Jordan as well.
Okay. I mean, sure, there were of course, as tensions rise, there are going to be developments in that direction. Similarly, like the United States, before the Six-Day War, had committed itself to like fully footing the bill for Israel's mobilization.
Wait, did we fully foot the bill for the Six-Day War?
No, we committed ourselves to fully footing the bill for Israel's mobilization. Hold on, I can send you this.
Okay. Let's see. Nasser made a speech towards the Arab trade unionists in May 26th, 1967, where one of the quotes is, "The battle will be a general one, and our basic objective will be to destroy Israel." I think there's a ton of quotes from him around this time about that. I can send you that whole speech if you want. Egypt amasses 100,000 troops at the site.
By the way, can I ask?
Yeah.
Can I ask as a kind of like a more of like a point of like process or like fairness? I haven't watched your research streams, but like when you like cite a quote, have you always read the?
I try to always read the underlying speech.
Okay.
Yes, that's why I have the link to it. Yes.
Okay.
Saudi Arabia. Oh, everybody was mobile. Oh, okay. So just as a quick thing, here's what was happening prior to this. Okay, so we have 100 Iraqi tanks. Saudi Arabia mobilizes forces on the Jordanian front. Arab air forces were also reinforced by aircraft from Libya, Algeria, Morocco, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia. Oh, that was to make up loss on the first day of the war. And then volunteer pilots also came from Pakistan. I think they were flying in Syria. Okay, I don't have anything in my notes about Soviet buildup of arms prior to 1956 or 1976. Let's see. Six-Day War, USSR, weapons, Egypt.
Have you read about this prior, the buildup of USSR weapons?
I believe so. I remember reading about it. I just didn't write. I just didn't record a specific note about it.
Okay.
Oh, also, if you could, something that I would be super interested in, I'd be really curious to read the Finkelstein passage that footnotes that passage in this guy's autobiography. I'm curious how he references these statements.
Okay.
Or you can even just give me the name of the book, and I'll go search for his footnotes on this.
Yeah, it's called Image and Reality. indeed the most convincing witness against Ivan. Okay. Okay, I found the pages.
Here's a little bit more context before the war. At the time, no Arab state had recognized Israel. Syria, aligned with the Soviet bloc, began sponsoring guerrilla raids on Israel in the early 1960s as part of its People's War of Liberation, designed to deflect domestic opposition to the Ba'ath Party. Speaking to the UN General Assembly in 1960, Nasser had stated the only solution to Palestine is that matters should return to the conditions prevailing before the error was committed, i.e., the annulment of Israel's existence. In 1964, he said, "We swear to God that we shall not rest until we restore the Arab nation of Palestine and Palestine to the Arab nation. There is no room for imperialism, and there is no room for Britain in our country, just as there is no room for Israel within the Arab nation." In 1965, he asserted, "We shall not enter Palestine with its soil covered in sand. We shall enter it with its soil covered in blood." Let's see. Tunisian Persian, blah, blah, blah. Let's see. The Suez Crisis aftermath. We have our Samu incident that happened in Syria. Also, if anybody in chat has a link to where Egypt was getting their weapons and everything from prior to 67, let me know. I mean, I'm pretty sure if we go and look on the page of like the armaments, I think it's all Soviet weaponry, I think. For the Arab armies, Egypt, Syria used T-35-85. This is Soviet medium tank, Soviet main battle tanks. T-55 is another Soviet battle tank, Soviet amphibious tank. This is an American. Oh, that was from Jordan. Jordan had some American weapons. And then there were German weapons by Syria. Yeah. Let's see. The Soviet Union intervened to halt the downward course of events and to deter Israel by activating the Egyptian-Syrian Defense Pact, signed in November of 1966 under Soviet pressure for this precise purpose. Government of the Soviet Union sees the need to warn again the government of Israel that the hazardous policy it has been waging for several years is fraught with danger and that Israel will be held solely responsible. I think this has to do more with fighting in Syria. Maybe I need better. Maybe I just read this quoted so many times, but I could try to find a better source for this. Border incidents multiplied, and numerous Arab leaders, both political and military, called for an end to Israeli attacks. Egypt, then already trying to seize a central position in the Arab world under Nasser, accompanied these declarations with plans to remilitarize the Sinai. Syria shared these views, although it did not prepare for an imminent invasion. The Soviet Union actively backed the military needs of the Arab states. I guess maybe I need to find more evidence of what that active military backing looks like.
Okay. Hold on, Destiny. I'm now going to mute and shit talk you to my empty room.
Go for it. Wait, before you do that, can you give me the page of that Finkelstein book?
Oh yeah, sure. Okay, so yeah, go to page 373.
Of what book?
It should start Image and Reality of the Israel-Palestine conflict.
Image and Reality of the Israel-Palestine conflict. Gotcha. And then also, as a quick thing too, this is 10 years earlier, but 10 years earlier in 55, the USSR and Egypt signed a pretty big Egyptian, Czechoslovakian arms deal. And that was to supply Egypt with more than $83 million worth of modern Soviet weaponry through Czechoslovakia. This is a major turning point in the Cold War and greatly impacted the Arab-Israeli conflict. That might have been the big shipment of arms that I was thinking of, though. But I can still try to find more stuff related to here. But there you go.
So that wouldn't be in the build-up to the Six-Day War.
No, but it would show that there is... I don't know if I cited this in particular. I might have. But I think it was just the general building up of these militaries, the defensive pacts being signed with all the surrounding countries, and then the mobilization of troops on the Jordanian, Syrian, and Egyptian front that probably made... Israel feel like a war was coming, or within the next year at least, or something. Yeah.
So are we talking about whether they thought war was coming, or whether their military forces or their military capabilities were dwindling? Because I thought you'd made the claim that, like, the longer the conflict dragged on, Israel's military forces were dwindling, and Egypt.
You keep saying Israel's military forces were dwindling. I've never made that statement. I've just said that their chances of winning a conflict were going to decrease as time went on. Yes.
Okay. So that's what I was. Yeah. Okay. That's what I.
Yeah. That is my belief. I think Israel probably felt that as well. Yes.
But why? But like, why? Just because of the Jordan joining in, or
because it's a ton of countries against Israel, because they seem to have a lot of external support from the Soviet Union, and because the entire Arab world seems united in destroying Israel as a country, and they've all said as much.
What does that have to do with, like, presumably that was the case for a long time. So what does that have to do with their chances were decreasing over time?
Because I don't know if they think that they're going to be able to fight off the entire Arab world, given support that they're getting from the Soviet Union as time goes on. Do I need to source that, or do you? Maybe I could try to find a source of that. But like
the idea that like Soviet like support was building, and that Egypt's military was growing stronger at a faster rate than Israel. Yeah, Why would
Israel feel like they could outgrow the combined force of the entire Arab world? Or is that? Do you think that's legitimately a feeling that they probably had, that Egypt was like, no, we could probably like literally take on the entire Arab world indefinitely?
So they had it. Well, so it depends on what you mean by indefinitely. So I mean, like, I thought we were talking over the time span of like months.
It doesn't have to be months. It could be like a year. But I mean, sure, Egypt was just getting its military back from conflict in Yemen. There was like growing unification between the Arab states in terms of military alliances, and Egyptian generals commanding said militaries, at least in Jordan, like, yeah, I think the pressures would have been felt that like all of these Arab countries are gearing up to destroy us, and if all of them unite in doing it, we're going to be fucked. I think that's a pretty fair. I guess I gotta try to source that, but I imagine that's just like goes without saying that if every country around you wants to eliminate you, and there's like 10 or 15 or 20 other countries involved in supplying them, you're probably not going to feel very good about that over a long period of time. Is that, or I could try to find a source for that, I guess.
I mean, it seems kind of like plausible, like kind of like prima facie, but like, yeah, I don't know. I guess I wouldn't make a strong judgment until I've like done more to go over like the factors that were playing into Israel's military capabilities and how those were increasing over time. And then the same thing with the Arab states.
Okay. USSR, I think this is a Soviet military aid to the United Arab Republic. I think this is a paper or a book, I'm not sure, but the USSR began to implement the 1964 Accord. Early in the following year, at least 10 Soviet freighters delivered military material, including SAM equipment and Mi-6 helicopters. The surface-to-air missile stuff is really important because Israel only maintains the ability to win if they can maintain air superiority. This was a huge issue in the beginning of the Yom Kippur War, that Soviet SAMs were a big fuck you, basically, for the first 3 days to Israel. I linked you this paper. I'm on page like 15. I'm just like reading through here. At least 10 Soviet freighters delivered military material, including SAM equipment and Mi-6 helicopters, in the first half of 1965. The pace of deliveries quickened in the second half of the year, following Egyptian entreaties to the USSR to expedite shipment of equipment. Deliveries of the MiG-21 FL limited all-weather fighters began in August of 1965, and at least, I think this is redacted, of these aircraft had arrived by the end of 1966. redacted, of the newer model Tu-16 jet bombers were delivered in December of 1965, raising the number to something of these aircraft in the UAR. Other aircraft deliveries included blank additional AN-12 assault transport, bringing UAR holdings of such aircraft to, I think they're censoring the numbers are probably redacted or whatever. After several years of relatively small deliveries of naval equipment, Soviet assistance for the Egyptian Navy increased substantially in 1965 to 1966. Blank of the UAR's obsolete W-class submarines were exchanged for modified versions, which arrived in December of 1965, and more of the older W-class craft were returned to the USSR in May of 1966. In addition, blank Newark-class submarines were delivered. The UAR reportedly will also receive several missile-equipped destroyers, probably of the Catlin or Krupny classes in the next few years. Another important development was the initiation of an assembly program in the UAR involving imported Soviet components. Ground equipment deliveries in 1965 to 66 included, this is redacted, late model T-55 medium tanks, we saw that on Wikipedia, as well as other armored vehicles, a wide range of artillery, including coastal defense guns, infantry weapons, and hundreds of support vehicles were also delivered during the period. In addition, some reports have indicated that the USSR may shortly provide Frog tactical rockets to the UAR. In September 1965, an agreement involving military aid was signed. And I could keep going, but that was from 65 to 66. So, yeah, okay.
So I'm not disputing that. So I'm not disputing that basically the Soviet Union was providing aid to, and like you mentioned, like the Soviet aid to Egypt had increased leading up to the 6-Day War, which of course. But like U.S. support to Israel, at least for its mobilization, we didn't support the war. But in terms of as tensions were building, we agreed to foot the bill for Israeli mobilization. So there were some factors on the Israeli side as well in terms of in the lead up to the 6-Day War, they had received increasing support from other parties, militarily. I guess I don't know. I'm not sure how to evaluate it at this time.
Wait, are you telling me that prior to the 6-Day War, the United States assured Israel that it would foot the bill for everything prior to the war?
For its mobilization, but not for the war.
What do you mean when you say mobilization?
Yeah, Israel had mobilized troops. Egypt had mobilized troops. And basically, the U.S. was okay, if there's some threat that you're going to get invaded or something, we'll provide you the money to maintain your mobilization of these troops over time.
Sure, I would be interested in seeing that the United States was making financial commitments prior to the war to Israel. I thought the United States was still relatively hands-off. I know we started selling them weapons after France stopped, but that, and I know we made way bigger commitments in the Yom Kippur War. We basically footed the entire bill and was replacing equipment like crazy in the Yom Kippur War. I don't remember for the 6-Day War that the United States made big financial free commitments to Israel. Maybe they did, and I just don't remember it, but I would be curious to see that listed somewhere.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah. You can mute for a second if you need to.
Sure.
Lex donated and said, should Israel-Palestine be a topic for debate with Ben Shapiro? What ideas, points of disagreement on the topic? If he wants to. I mean, I watched his overview of it. I think Ben gives an insanely pro-Zionist take that I think is bordering on ahistorical, but I don't know if I want to fight. I think I'd still rather fight about Biden and Trump. That would be more interesting to me because it's more politically relevant to us. Okay. Here is the Finkelstein book. He mentioned page 302 is the Iban reference. Oh my God, what is this? Do I actually need to download this, or is this a fucking spyware? What the fuck is this? Is this a real update, or is this a spyware or something? I emailed you the book. Image and oh, you did. Thank you. Okay. What page did you say? You said page 373. Okay, let's see. Fuck. Do you think the PDF 373? This is a different page number. Oh, top right X. Oh, thank you. Can you give me what was the verbiage that he used, that Finkelstein used here? Or a quote?
Let me see. So it should start at, okay, look up, Eban also notes an impressive, with impressive in like, how do you say, like not quotes, but the other thing that's used when you're quoting someone with less little things, you know.
Ugh, bro, this. Okay. Okay, all right. I found it.
Or you can look at U.S. Military Intelligence Review at the end of May, like a good keyword.
Indeed, the most convincing witness against Eban is, again, Eban himself. In his memoirs, Eban reveals that not only did Israel not face mortal danger from an Arab attack, but its prospects steadily improved with each day's passing. I'm going to just read this on my
Okay.
page 187. Hold on. This website is fucking AIDS. Okay. In his maiden speech to the Security Council after Israel's preemptive strike, Eban purported that as time went on, there was no doubt that our margin of general security was becoming smaller and smaller. Yet, the chair of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff told Johnson at the end of May that Israel could remain at its current level of mobilization for 2 months without jeopardizing its security. The United States had also committed itself to fully footing the bill for Israel's mobilization. Oh, this is where you got this from. Okay. So, the United States had committed itself to footing the bill for Israel's mobilization. And the source for this is...
It's like the Security Council records.
22nd year, 5th of June.
That's the source that I have listed. I don't know if he lists other ones.
Okay. Here you guys go. Check... If someone just okay, I believe that now. But this isn't like mobilization for war. This is just like a defensive mobilization of troops prior.
That's what I said. Yeah.
Well, okay. It's not like that. It sounded like you were saying like preparing for war, but this is definitely not a commitment to support Israel for any type of like war activities. Just for like.
That is literally what I said. I said not for the war. I said that like 3 times.
Okay, gotcha. All right, my misunderstanding. Okay. Okay. Indeed, the most convincing witness against Eban is, again, Eban himself. In his memoirs, Eban reveals that not only did Israel face mortal danger from an Arab attack, but its prospects steadily improved with each day's passing. He reports that in the final days before the preemptive strike, Israel's military position became predictably better and that of Egypt unexpectedly worse, and that the Arab states were vastly enlarging their own vulnerability, and that stories of chaotic dislocation among Egyptian forces in the Sinai were becoming more frequent and authoritative, while equipment we previously ordered from Europe was reaching us each day. Eban also cites an impressive U.S. military intelligence review at the end of May, which found the days and hours that were passing did not increase the inability of Israel to defend herself successfully, but on the contrary, it was Egyptian forces who were increasing their vulnerability. Israel's lines of supply and communication were short and efficient, whereas Egypt's were a nightmare of distance and complexity. Israel's immediate security was in good shape, it concluded, while Egyptian difficulties would grow every hour. Dupuy's chapter subheading for the Sinai mobilization on the eve of the war reads, "Confusion Confounded." Okay. I don't necessarily disagree with this, but it doesn't necessarily agree with you. Just the idea that, I mean, it seems obvious that Egypt was not prepared for a huge war with Israel on June 5th. But I don't think anything of this contradicts the idea that that Israel feels like it's facing an existential threat with the growing power and unification of the Arab states. I don't even know. I'm not sure if Finkelstein is making that argument either, but...
No, so, yeah. So the point in which I initially brought this up was, I don't know, you could totally use my, like, lack of a short-term memory to fuck me here, but, like, what I think I remember this being in the context of, or at least what I thought I quoted these passages to argue against, was the claim that in the build up to the war, Israel was getting stronger Israel was getting weaker and Egypt was getting stronger. But maybe you didn't say that, because I felt like your objection to that was that you're now saying, or not now saying, but your claim is that your claim has always been, no, it's not that Egypt was getting Egypt was getting stronger while Israel was getting weaker in the lead up to the war. The claim is that, you know, if the buildup had lasted like several more months, that's what the trend would have looked like, which I guess isn't disproven by that evidence.
Sure. So I guess, so to back up macro all the way from the beginning of this conversation, my feeling is that Israel, justifiably so, felt like the existence of their country was being threatened because of the aggressive stance that Egypt was taking against it, and that Egypt was preparing itself, along with the rest of the Arab nation, or the rest of the Arab League, to attack and destroy Israel. Those are my general feelings and statements from the beginning of this conversation. Do you think those are still false, or do you think those are true, or do you think I misunderstood your position, or?
Do I think it's false that Israel perceived a threat to its existence in the Arab states' increasingly aggressive stance?
That's part one, and part two was that the Arab states were actually increasing their military power to destroy Israel. That those two things were both probably true at the time.
Okay, so firstly, with regard to the second claim, yeah, like absolutely. And I said this before, I like conceded this immediately without any pushing on it, which is that, of course, in the lead up to the 6-Day War, Egypt was starting to receive increasing support from other parties. Like, of course, if there's going to be a war, they're going to start receiving more military support from people who want to support them in a war. But, you know, I never objected to that. All I professed, like, agnosticism or skepticism about was the claim that Egypt was getting stronger relative to the pace at which Israel was getting stronger, or that over time it was the case that the likelihood of Egypt winning the war was shifting more and more in Egypt's direction.
Gotcha. So you think that if the 6-Day War would have happened 6 months later, do you think Israel's position would have been improved, or do you think it would have declined?
I'm agnostic about that.
What do you think a person on the ground at that particular point of time would have thought?
I'm agnostic about that as well. I'm not sure.
Okay.
And then I guess with respect to the first part, yeah, I mean, I think that Israel felt increasingly threatened. There were rising tensions. So I think both Israel and the Arab states felt an increasing level of threat from each other. But the point that I've just been making is that I don't think the 6-Day War was justified. I think that the threat represented by the closing of the Straits of Tiran and the buildup of troops is like greatly overstated. I think that there were plausible attempts at diplomacy that were basically rejected by Israel, even in some cases when the Arab leaders assented.
Well, we never provided any. There was no evidence of that last one, unless
evidence of
there were diplomatic channels that were explored that Israel rejected and the Arab states pursued. Unless that's also Finkelstein's book somewhere, but.
So I mean, Finkelstein does talk about this if you want to. I don't know what the relevance is, but like, Um, um, but yeah, I mean, I gave you specific examples. Do you just reject that, like, these things happened, or?
I think you're basically just restating all of the points that I feel like I knocked down earlier now with less justification than earlier.
I don't think so at all.
Okay.
I don't understand what the response was supposed to be to the examples I cited of the diplomatic avenues.
Well, the underlying source that I read said that diplomatic channels looked like they had basically been exhausted prior to the 6-Day War. That's what Ibn said in the book that I read for his autobiography.
Yeah, so, I mean, we already established, or maybe you don't believe me, you can go back and look. The reason, what happened there was that I was trying to cite something about the relative progression of Egyptian-Israeli military forces. I cited the wrong page. You read a page where he talked about diplomacy and thought that I meant to cite that page in defense of my points about diplomacy, but I never actually cited Ibn.
Okay. Was there another citation then for Israel abandoning promising diplomatic resolutions?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Wait, we can go over that for the last one. I feel like every other argument has been more or less knocked down. I think I've seen pretty compelling evidence that the USSR was shipping a ton of weapons to Egypt.
Which I never denied, and which underdetermines the point in question.
And you also acknowledged that Nasser was making statements about the destruction of Israel prior to going to war, or no?
Nasser made statements about the destruction of Israel prior. I mean, yes, but that's kind of a vague way to put it.
That he wanted to go to war and destroy Israel?
That he wanted to go to war and destroy Israel? I guess, yeah, I haven't seen that quote. What's the quote that he wanted to go to war and destroy Israel?
Let's see. I believe it was to the, Control F, it would be Arab trade unionists. Just reading from here. The problem today is not just Israel, but also those behind it. If Israel embarks on an aggression against Syria or Egypt, the battle against Israel will be a general one and not confined to one spot on the Syrian and Egyptian borders. The battle will be a general one, and our basic objective will be to destroy it.
Super misleading already, the way that you cited that.
What part of that was misleading?
The conditional where it said if Israel attacks, we'll destroy Israel. You don't think that's pretty relevant?
I think it's super relevant. Yes.
Okay, then why did you leave that out when you originally cited the quote?
What do you think I just left out?
You left out the conditional clause, which is highly relevant.
Hold on, wait. Did I just not say a word? Hold on. Did I just omit something?
Yes, well, you admitted a relevant part of the quote, a highly relevant part of the quote.
Wait, hold on.
You said you were building up your kind of cumulative case for the Arabs were being aggressive towards Israel and Israel.
Wait, hold on. I'm just trying to wait. Are you accusing me that I just omitted a word from a sentence that I literally have pulled up on stream? Is that what you said I just did?
No. You just read the full quote correctly.
Yes.
My point is, when you read the full quote correctly, it had a clause which made a meaningful difference, which you didn't originally include when you were citing the statement. Because you said that Nasser wanted to destroy Israel and that he was super hostile towards Israel, and that's why Israel perceived a threat to its existence, right? And your evidence was Nasser made statements about destroying Israel. And then when you go to the statements, Nasser's if Israel attacks us, we'll destroy Israel. I think that's very meaningful.
Yes, but this is in the context of him closing the strait. He knows that this is a provocation for war.
Okay. Now you're just moving to a completely different point. Which is sure, we can talk about the Straits of Tiran. The point being...
Hold on, it's literally in this same speech.
Okay. I don't know what the relevance of that would be.
What is the relevance of him saying, if Israel goes to war with us, we will destroy Israel, and we're going to do an action that we know will make Israel go to war with us?
No. No, my point is that, no, sure, it's relevant, right? It's relevant that he, like, so if the case that you want to make is that he closed the Straits of Tehran, right? And that was an aggressive move, and Israel perceived that as aggressive. That's fine. The point is, like that quote that you're citing isn't really doing any independent work in establishing that Nasser was like had this super aggressive stance towards Israel and wanted to take Israel over, because like
wait, hold on. First of all, wait. Even without the Straits, of course that's a super aggressive quote. What are you talking about? That if we fight a battle with Israel, the goal is to destroy the country? Even if we ignore everything else, that on its own is incredibly aggressive, of course.
Sure, it's aggressive, right? It's an aggressive statement, but it's significantly less aggressive than you made it sound initially, right?
Hold on. Oh, wait. Because if we disagree here, we're done. Because this must be said in bad faith. If somebody says, if we are provoked to war, we will destroy your country, you think that's not that aggressive of a quote?
That is an aggressive quote, okay? But now let's think of two different contexts, right? And one, there's rising tension between two states, right? In both cases, there's rising tension between two states, right? And in one context, one of the states who's experiencing this rising tension says, I want to destroy that other state. I intend to destroy that other state. Do you think that's more or less aggressive than if that state had said, if that other state attacks me, then I'll destroy it?
I think it's the former is more aggressive, but in the context of everything happening, it's basically the same statement. We shall not relinquish, this is in the same speech, we shall not relinquish our rights. We shall not concede our right to the Gulf of Aqaba. Today, the people of Egypt, the Syrian army, and the Egyptian army comprise one front. We want the entire front surrounding Israel to become one front. We want this. Naturally, there are obstacles at present. Of course, Wasfi al-Tal is a spy for the Americans and the British. We cannot cooperate with these spies in any form because the battle is one of destiny and the spies have no place in this battle. We want the front to become one united front around Israel. We will not relinquish the rights of the people of Palestine. So I've said before, I was told at the time that I might have to wait 70 years. During the Crusaders' occupation, the Arabs waited 70 years before a suitable opportunity arose and they drove away the Crusaders. Some people commented that Abdel Nasser said we should shelve the Palestinian question for 70 years, but I say that as a people with an ancient civilization, as an Arab people, we are determined that the Palestine question will not be liquidated or forgotten. The whole question, then, is the proper time to achieve our aims. We are preparing ourselves constantly. You are the hope of the Arab nation and its vanguard. As workers, you're actively building the Arab nation. The quicker we build, the quicker we'll be able to achieve our aim. I thank you for your visit and wish you every success. Please convey my greatest and best wishes to the Arab workers in every Arab country. How is this not just like a blatantly saying that, like, yeah, we're building up to fucking destroy you? Like, it's basically, it's like verbatim what's being said. Like,
we're building up to destroy. No, because when you say we're building up to destroy you, that gives off the impression that Nasser was planning a preemptive attack against Israel, which he never indicated.
Okay.
Like, we both agree that the closing of the Straits of Tehran was an aggressive move, that contributed to tensions, right? My point is that amidst rising tensions, in part caused by one's own actions, nonetheless, it's the case that if one says, if you attack me
was there
first,
a quote that where Nasser said that he knew closing the Straits meant war?
That's a meaningfully different statement.
Can somebody link me that quote? I feel like I know we read this somewhere.
I intend to attack you and destroy you preemptively.
Well, hold on, but it was after provocation that he knew would lead to war, right?
Okay, I just don't know how that engages with what I just said.
If somebody says, if you fight me, I will destroy your country, and then they give you a cause for war, what do you think that means?
It's an aggressive move. I never contested that.
No, it's not an aggressive move. It's a provocation for war.
Sure, if by provocation we just mean something that like raises the likelihood of war or something like that, then sure.
Okay, so if they're
I literally never disputed that. The closing of the Straits of Tehran and that some statements that Nasser made was provocatory. The current issue that I'm having is that you said you were building up this case for the Arabs were being super aggressive. There was an imminent threat to Israeli security. And the way you originally phrased what Nasser said is that he wanted to destroy Israel. which I think is a misleading way to frame a conditional claim that if Israel attacks us, we will destroy it.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. That was a huge waste of time. Jesus fucking Christ. You did say if, by the way. Oh, did I initially? Wait, hold on. Oh, in this. He's saying that I misquoted the quote from earlier in our conversation. Was there a, I'm trying to think, did Nasser say originally, I thought he said that I know closing this, I thought there was a stronger quote than even this. 2 days later, on May 21st, Egypt called up its reserves and moved them into the Sinai. Addressing Air Force officers on the Sinai on May 22nd, Nasser stated, "We are ready for war. These waters are ours. War might be an opportunity for the Jews, for Israel, to test their strength against ours. The Israeli flag shall not go through the Gulf of Aqaba. Our sovereignty over the entrance to the Gulf cannot be disputed. If Israel wishes to threaten war, we tell her, you are welcome." I thought there was an even stronger quote than this. But... yeah. Okay. Was this? It might have been this quote. Fuck. That's such a narrow quote, though. The words of Amit, the basic evaluation was correct. Egypt was not ready for war, and Nasser did not want a war. Till the 23rd of May, I thought that there is a possibility for maneuvers, that there is leeway for alternatives. But when Nasser closed the straits, I said, this is it. There is no way to avoid war. That's not a quote from Nasser, though. That's a quote from somebody else. But... oh, is it this? As 5 other Arab countries deployed their troops towards Israel, Nasser told the public, "We knew that closing the Gulf of Aqaba meant war with Israel. If war comes, it will be total, and the objective will be Israel's destruction." What is did we read the source for, boom, boom, boom. I don't even know why I'm looking this shit up. Fuck, God, I can't believe I just wasted time. No, it's not a waste of time. It's always good to, we knew that closing the Gulf of Aqaba meant war. If war comes, it will be a total, and the objective will be Israel's destruction. This is Arab power. We will never be in a better position than now. Our forces are well equipped and trained. We will have all the advantages of attacking first. Jeez, we are sure of victory. My generals told me we will win. What would you say to them? Damn. Fuck, I should hunt down some of these quotes. I think the beginning of the 6-Day War is probably an important thing, because some people argue that basically it's good proof for Israel's territorial conquest appetite. But okay.